fucking. All right, no touching it. Here, give me a sound check.
We good? Check, check.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
You want me to pull it closer?
I can turn it up, but if you move, it's going to be too loud.
Oh, yeah, if I come forward.
Yeah. Well, so that's why the earphones are important. That's what I was telling Noah. I'm like, you don't need to, but if you, I'm going to have to tell you, like, yo, move forward.
Yeah.
Okay, move back.
Yeah.
Or I got to sit here and adjust this thing.
That should be like, hi, bootleg.
Yeah, that'll be my intro. All right, here we go. Back for another one. Come on with it, dude. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Jamie Miller, the guy that didn't even know he was naming this podcast, but he did. Dude, thank you for coming in.
Come on with it, bootleg.
Oh man, dude, my wife knows that, dude. She every time I call you, she's like, you got to say it to him.
Yeah.
And so I'd say it to you now.
And my wife would always be like, why do you say that to him? I'm like, I don't know. I don't even know why I started saying it.
Dude, it's been so long. I have no idea.
Right. Yeah, I don't know either.
So if you guys don't know who Miller is, and I'll just be referring to him as Miller, but you got to figure it the fuck out, right? You got to Google him for Christ's sake, all right? NHRA Promod championships, a bunch of radial stuff, dude. You know, from building complete cars to fixing cars. The man, dude. I'll tell you this. I remember one time I was like, I'm working on like a torque arm F body, and I'm like, Miller, do you know anything about these fucking torque arms? And you're like, oh yeah, I designed the first one ever for like Midwest Chassis or whoever's like the big torque arm people now. And I'm like, of course you did, right? And then you, of course, like always, you just bring me to school about torque arms, and so it's ridiculous the amount of stuff that you know. A lot of the stuff I feel like you should forget.
Yeah. I mean, well, here's the deal. When you live at the racetrack for like the last 15 years, you end up figuring a whole bunch of stuff out. Right?
Yeah.
Right? And so it's always been cool to come down here and like when we first started hanging out and stuff and, being around the dyno and just us talking. That was when you were a big Holly guy. You know what I mean?
Well, hold on. I was a big Mega Squirt guy.
Mega Squirt. Yeah, that one. But, which, look, I'm not going to hammer on any of those. They're all good ECUs. I know you got hammered last time, but there's things that I think can be done from a drag racing application with the fuel tech stuff that is superior to the others. That's my opinion. That's what I like using.
No, right? I don't think you're wrong. I think we'll get right into it, right? Goddamn.
Well, hold on. I gotta tell you.
Hit me with
First thing that we're gonna talk about.
Okay, go for it.
So I listened to your podcast.
Don't touch the table. See, you already heard it. Right? I got some cheap shit. I don't have Brian Chin money, right?
Listen. There you go. What is it?
Dude, I'm a mess, dude.
So I appreciate all the good stuff that you guys were saying, you and John the other day.
Yeah.
But if I hear you two fucking nerds talk about any more Honda shit, listen, I'm unfriending you. We're no longer buddies.
Listen,
because I don't want to hear about it.
Listen to me right now. I wish it was never brought up.
Yeah, me too.
Right, but it's amazing how many people reached out to me and said, dude, my story is identical to this. Yeah. And
everybody's got their start. I mean, I didn't start with shit boxes like that, but
what did you start with? Because I know a lot about you, but I don't know how it all started for you.
So my first car was a 72 Chevelle.
God, dude, are you serious?
Yeah.
You were cooler than us from the word go.
I didn't have Hondas and bullshit and Volkswagen.
Well,
I did have Volkswagens later.
Okay.
But, daily drivers.
I mean, yeah, you probably had a 72 Chevelle in 72, you old fuck.
No, it wasn't that. But it was, it's a long time ago. Yeah. So, ham radios and stuff. Actually, I had a CB in it.
No, you didn't.
Fuck yeah, I did. Big antenna.
No, you didn't.
Oh, yeah. That's what we did.
Because there's no cell phones.
Oh, dude. No cell
So,
phone.
wait, you're telling me you had a CB radio in your 72 Chevelle.
Big antenna hanging off the back of it.
Talking to the boys?
Oh, yeah. When we would cruise around, that's how we got a hold of each other in the cars.
No way, dude. That's awesome.
It's old school.
I kind of want to go back to that.
Right? It's awesome. So, yeah, so my first car was a 72 Chevelle. Did a bunch of work on it. I was always, into working on stuff. Had motorcycles, ride motorcycles when I was young.
Dirt bikes.
Yeah, dirt bikes.
Crashing three-wheelers.
crashing three-wheelers
Yeah.
bad.
Yep.
You know what I mean? 250R, worst crash I've ever taken in my life.
Yeah, I've heard about it.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Probably why they banned them.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right.
So
we're done. We're done touching the table.
So, 72 Chevelle, worked on it, like, rebuilt the whole thing. Actually, it was a pretty nice car. I had a 283 when I bought it. The 283, took a crap, put a 350 in it, but like, man, we didn't know anything. And you got to remember, we're going old school here. There's no YouTube videos to watch.
Right.
Like, you just tried stuff.
Right.
And had no idea. So
what year is this in? Are we talking about?
So let's see. 92 I graduated. So this must have been 89 or 90. 1990. We're not even in 2000s, dude.
What a time to be alive.
Oh yeah, right? So
I was 4.
yeah, I wasn't. So I had a good buddy of mine, Doug Smith, that man, him and I used to just do all this crazy shit together, And this is a good story. I'll put this. I don't want to stay in that time frame.
Sure.
But we decided I wanted a 4-speed in the car because it was automatic, right?
Yeah.
So I accumulated all these parts,
Muncie 4-speed.
Muncie 4-speed. Bought that like rebuilt from Giannetti Racing.
Holy shit,
Oh,
Giannetti
yeah,
was around that long
that's
ago?
how long I've known Ted Giannetti. Yeah,
Wow.
like long time. Whew. So anyways, I accumulate all this stuff. I have no idea what we're doing, but we put it in the car, right?
Because you're like 17.
I'm 17. I'm 16 and 17 years old, right? So me and Doug put it in. We go down the road. I'm shifting the car. I'm like, man, this is badass. This is cool. First, second, I throw it in third, and I'm like, man, it's like that thing's a dog in third gear. And I shift to fourth, and it takes back off. Well, when you looked at the shifter linkage, it didn't make sense. It's all together in this one area. This is hard to fit in there. Why don't I just flip this one lever around? What difference does it make? Well, it makes a difference because it shifted from second to fourth, then to third. Right? But listen, that's how we learn stuff.
Right.
You know what I mean? Just doing that. And that car ended up with a big block in it, and I put a cage in it, and,
Damn, so you had it for a while.
I had it for a while. Yeah.
Sick.
Yeah, and then I got a Fox body that I drove, to high school. Or excuse me, I got it when I got out of high school. Had a Fox body. I drove to college and stuff, and then of course start messing with that and
Right.
everything. But I've always been into, messing with stuff.
Was your? I don't know much about your family deal. Was your dad or anything into cars?
No, so it's funny. My dad was he's a badass woodworker.
Okay.
Right? So, but he just could see stuff. He could just figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Right. It didn't matter what it was. Very
Right.
mechanical. So like he would help me do stuff, but like I said, he had no idea. But he just saw things.
Right. He could
He
look
could
at that
just look
shifter.
at something and say
He could
yeah,
look at the shifter and be like, "You got it
Yeah.
fucked up right here."
Yeah. Yep. So
That's cool.
No, it's cool. Yeah. So, but then it's funny, man. I tell Julie this all the time, and it's weird looking back on it now, but I remember being in the car driving around with my dad, and you talk about what you want to do as you get older. And I was probably like maybe 10, 11 years old, and I'm like, I want to be a badass race car guy. Like, I didn't know at what like level,
Yeah, or how you wanted to do it.
how I was
Right.
going to do it,
Right.
but
Yeah.
like I just wanted to do it.
Well, back then there was no such thing as tuners. I would
No,
imagine.
no.
Maybe at the very top level.
Right.
But
not like you're going to be there. Nobody I knew was a race car tuner, and that's how
Yeah.
they made their living.
Right.
Right. So, but yeah, it's funny how things work out like that.
yeah,
you know?
I remember. So my entire family, like all my brothers, my father, they were very talented in sports, specifically hockey.
Yeah.
And I was the fucking.
Played hockey.
Yeah, I mean, I played hockey. It's funny. I would probably enjoy it now, but at the time, I definitely didn't enjoy it. But I was always the black sheep from the word go. I was into cars, dirt
Yeah.
bikes, whatever. Right.
Same.
And I have 3 brothers. My father, they did not.
Nope.
Right.
Didn't understand it.
Yeah, and I don't understand where it came from. I think way back in the day, my dad tells me stories of, I think he had a 72 Chevelle and gas was whatever, 10 cents. And they raised it to 12 cents and they couldn't afford it anymore. You know what I mean? Like that type of story.
Yeah.
But beyond that, yeah, I don't know what happened to me. Somebody dropped me or something, but
Yeah. I mean, it's just, I think if it's in you, it's in you. You know what I mean? And then as I got older, like I had this interest of learning how to build stuff, right? And fabricate. I didn't know how to do any of it, right? But I had interest in it.
Well, it was definitely in you if your dad's a woodworker.
Yeah, right. You know, and I got this job building beach cleaners. Now, I'm like...
Wait. Like the rakes that clean beaches?
Yeah.
No shit.
That's where so that started me into learning fabrication stuff, welding, right? So, and I picked up the welding, and it was just, I just picked it up, and it was easy.
Well,
Like, you know what I mean? It was...
Look at John.
Right. Same kind of deal, right? You know, it was MIG welding. It was bigger industrial stuff.
Right.
So, right, you're not, you know, it doesn't have to be small. So there's a lot of room for error there.
Yeah, melted in there.
Exactly. And, but I learned a bunch of stuff there. And then I got this job with a buddy of mine. He had this Pro 4 circle track car. We used to run at Riverside. And he crashed it, and there was nobody to fix the cars. So we met this guy, Mike Paquette, had this little shop. It was called M&D Competition.
Is this the really smart guy you still talk to sometimes?
So yes, but Bob Cuneo was the guy that taught Mike, okay?
Okay.
And then I worked for Mike. So essentially I learned Cuneo's way, we'll call it, right? Yep. And I started working for Mike, and he just needed a helper there. Right. And like I would sit at a bandsaw and cut these little parts and stuff like that. Well, then, you know, fast forward, I started building cars for him. I got to work with Bob Cuneo. That's the guy, you know, that we talked about. That's the guy, right? And to this day, I still talk to him and go over to his shop and help him with all these crazy projects. And stuff like that.
I've heard you talk to him. I know a couple times you left here, go to lunch with him and stuff. Yeah,
exactly. Super intelligent, talented guy. Like redesigned and built the USA bobsleds, right?
Oh, that's right. I remember you telling me about this.
So we used to get cup cars in there. So at the time, it was Jeff Bodine and Todd Bodine's cup cars, and we would basically get them as a center section. And then Kuhn designed this whole front end and rear end for the cars, clips, and we would build them and put them, and then they would be racing them, you know, in cup racing. It was Winston Cup racing at the time, you know. So man, I've gotten to do a lot of cool stuff and learned a ton of stuff from Bob Cuneo and Mike. Right, Mike taught me all the ins and outs of fabrication and like how to do it the right way. Right, you know what I mean?
Right.
And
yeah, Mike was your door opener.
100%.
Yeah.
Right. 100%. And you know, I still talk to him to this day and stuff. You know.
Sick.
Yeah. But it's cool. But that's where I started, you know, and man, it's funny when I talk to guys about like repairing race cars and stuff. Like I've probably repaired over 100 to 150 race cars because these things used to crash every week.
Well, I was going to say a cup car, a circle track car, any wheel-to-wheel racing car is getting fucked up.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Right.
Like
and the turnaround's got to be.
Oh no, we had 3 days. So Monday morning they would start bringing them in, and they had to be fixed and ready back out the door by Wednesday at the latest.
Because they didn't have spare cars.
No.
Because the budget wasn't there.
Yeah, the budget's not like what we see in drag racing at the level that we're lucky enough to race at right now. That's not even that's not even reality.
That didn't exist then. Yeah.
No. And not in that type of racing, it just doesn't. You don't have to have that budget to race those type of cars.
Right.
You know.
You just needed quick turnaround time and you win championships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to have talent driving.
Right. Well, that goes without saying.
You know. So that turned into you know, I wanted to do some drag race stuff. I just started tinkering with stuff. And
was drag racing always your interest, or did you figure it out as you were doing the cup stuff? Well, you had already had your 72 Chevelle, so you were already...
I was already into drag racing.
Yep.
You know what I mean? I was. That's what I wanted to do.
That's so, you know, it's funny, right? Like people are always like, you know, like I worked with Carlos this weekend, right?
Yeah.
He's like, where are you from, right? And I'm like, Connecticut. And he goes, are there any tracks up there? And you're like, not even close. But then you're like, you know, all the guys, Miller, Cartuccio, like myself, John, Noah, like all these people. And it's just like, dude, the closest track to us is a shithole. You know, it's not a shithole, but it's not a great track, right? And it's 3 hours away.
That's right.
And like for some reason, Connecticut, specifically Wallingford, is just like this mecca.
It's crazy.
It's insane. Has it always been like that?
Yeah, and you know, when I had the Chevelle and had my Mustang and stuff, like Wallingford is where we came. And I don't know. And so like when I was in high school, my last year, like senior year, I hung out with all guys from Wallingford because they were all into cars. And really in Cheshire, where I grew up, nobody was really into cars. You know what I mean? It was like me and my buddy Doug were into stuff, and he had a truck and all that. And so it's like, I met these guys out with my Mustang and my Chevelle, and like we hit it off, and they were into the same stuff, messing around, street racing a little bit. Look, slow street racing. Like we're talking
not the shit like going on today.
No, nothing like that.
Yeah.
Like I'm not trying to make it out I was some badass street racer because that's not the case. You know
I already told him I'm not built for it, dude.
No. So, but in turn, so I just wanted to start working towards building some drag car stuff, and started a little shop and
Miller Racecars.
Yeah, Miller Racecars.
Still your Instagram name.
Yep, and was started in Wallingford, and I had a little shop, moved to a bigger shop, moved back down to a small shop, had a lot of disaster stuff happen. You know what I mean? Didn't know how to run a business. Don't make claims that I did at the time. I'm a young kid, right? And so you have to understand too. Like
I wouldn't be able to do it without my wife. I'll tell you that much.
So not only am I young, I have a family. I've got kids to support.
You had your first young.
Yeah. I was 20 years old.
Yeah.
Whew. Yeah, and now I'm lucky because I got 3 grandkids and I'm 50.
Yeah,
so
that's sick.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm on the other end of it. I'm 38, just having my first kids, dude.
No, but at the time, like I just had to work. Like I didn't know anything else, but I just knew that I couldn't stop. And so like I had jobs. I would still work at the Circle Track shop. I would work at my shop
while you had your business, right?
Yeah, and just things take its toll, and you learn the things to not. Now looking back at it, like I made a lot of mistakes. Yeah. We all do, right? But so some things happen. Shop basically was gone, and I had to make a decision like what I was going to do. And what year
are we in now?
So we are probably in like 2000. I want to say like maybe 2008.
Yep.
2007, something like that. I want to believe that's when it happened. So like I had taken a job at it was called helicopter support, but it was a division of basically the repair division of Sikorsky.
Okay.
And I went in there and got a job because I needed a job, right? I needed to make money.
So wait, you had your shop, mistakes were made, whatever happened, it shut down or backburnered?
Well, somebody decided to come in there and take everything I own.
Right.
They thought it was theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a tough story.
That's a whole nother debacle.
We can get into it.
Nah, we don't need to.
Yeah.
Because look, all things happen for a reason. I'm going to say that. At the time, I didn't understand the reason, but I can tell you this.
It worked out the way it needed to work out.
It did, because I would have been stuck there.
Yep.
I would have.
Well, me and you talk about it all the time. There are very talented chassis guys that are married. Yeah. It's funny. The example you gave me, do you remember this conversation when you first talked to me about Carlos, and then you told me the other story with the car that you had to jump on, and you were just like, hey man, like this guy just can't get out of his shop. Yeah. And then did you see he's not taking any more work.
Yeah.
And he said the same thing.
Yeah.
And I wonder if the conversation you had with him had anything to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it does. It happens. Like you just end up in this vicious cycle of like one after the other because you're just trying to make ends meet, right? And it's just
keeping your head down.
And here's what I learned, and I think this is kind of what we talked about. Like you cannot do a good job at knowing how to race a car and how they need to be built unless you spend time at the racetrack. You can't do both because you're sheltered in these 4 walls, and you don't necessarily if you don't have somebody to give you the feedback, right? To say, well, look, this needs to be done this way so that when we work on it, right? I didn't know this at the time. Obviously, this is all experience, right? But that's right now, like, and I think I remember now what we were talking about. But, I had this conversation with another guy, too, that's very, very talented.
Dude,
builds really nice cars.
Amazing shit.
But I said to him, I'm like, it's hard for you to know if you don't have somebody that you, first of all, trust that's going to give you the right information to say, look, when you build these things, these are the issues that we run into. Let's make sure that we build it accordingly, right? And go from there. So it's a tough deal, man. It's like you can't do both. You can't. You know what I mean? So you rely on, and I'm not just saying me, but somebody like myself that's at the racetrack that you can say, hey man, what, when we're doing this, and that's what I do for a lot of chassis shops now.
Right.
And guy, like, I don't make it public for all the people I do. I help John, right? Him and I, but I don't necessarily help him. Like, him and I have done projects together.
Yeah, you guys work.
We work together,
right.
You know what I mean? But I have guys that will hire me to come out to their chassis shop and lay out a car.
Yeah.
Right? And tell them engine placement, you know, where the four-link needs to be as far as heights and all the things associated,
right.
depending on what the car is being built for, what
right.
tire it's going to run. Or are we doing the Swiss Army deal where it's going to be a radial car, a big tire car?
Does Swiss Army ever work?
If the beginning of the project, it's known that that's what's going to happen.
Well, hold on, let me rephrase. Does Swiss Army ever work with a steel corded car?
Yeah, to a point.
To a point.
Right? You can take a steel roof and quarter car and run it, let's say, on big tires, like a no prep, no time deal, right? And you can turn it into a Pro 275 car, and they can work just fine. They can. They absolutely can. But that being said, some things have to be done
at the very beginning
of it. At the very beginning. Engine placement, engine angle.
Right.
Right? Because you go from one extreme to the next. You've got a combination where you're compressing the rear suspension, then you're extending the rear suspension.
Right.
And I see that a lot, that people miss the angle of the engine placement really can become an issue when you try to go back and forth. So you kind of average it out, right? Which you can make work really well.
I don't understand, and I'm not going to sit here and drill you for some insider baseball shit. So if you plead the fifth, if you need to plead the fifth, I don't understand how engine angle would affect that.
Okay. So
would affect it to the point where it would work for one and not for the other. Right. So now you mentioned, I'm just picking up that you're saying the engine angle may be different when you're squatting a four-link as compared to and is it because of the drive shaft, the pinion angle that you run with one versus the other?
Well, it's not only pinion angle, but think about the height of the housing inside the chassis. When you're compressing it, you're starting at ride height, and you're compressing it, let's just say, over a range of, typically I like to see about
an inch.
Let's say an inch of compression,
right?
Right? But then, depending on the aero package on the car, it may compress 2 inches
as it goes down
the track with the aero package, the wing, the wicker bill, all those. Okay, so now your rear end is up in this house, up in the car, 2 inches.
Yep.
So your drive shaft is heading, let's say, uphill.
Yep.
Okay, so if you had an engine that was mounted perfectly at
flat.
Zero, flat.
Yep.
Now your drive shaft's running
uphill.
Correct. Okay, well then do the opposite. Now take it and extend it 5 inches. Now it's got this severe angle down.
Right.
Okay. So on a big tire car, typically the angle of the engine is somewhere in the range of, let's call it 1 to 2 degrees
up,
down in the front, tail shaft up.
Tail shaft up.
Right.
That way when it compresses, you have a straight drive shaft.
There you go.
Got it.
Okay. But you can run into this being an issue, and this is where this changes. Okay. Again, knowing your transmission, your setup. So if you were to take a Turbo 400 and ran it, you have a longer drive shaft because the distance from the mid plate to the tail housing.
Right.
Now if you were to put, let's just say you wanted to run a 5-speed Liberty
and it's longer
with a quick drive.
Right.
Well, now this transmission and quick drive ends up, and let's call it a lockup, and now you end up with a short drive shaft. Well, the rate of change on a short drive shaft is much quicker. So now you have these steep angles in the universals, which can cause them to fail.
Right.
Right.
And so that's when people get hurt.
And then you take it and you put something that drops out 5 inches from ride height for extension. You've got a massive angle in the drive shaft, and it can become a problem.
Yeah.
And again, I think that these little things that I'm saying, some guys overlook.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right? Because if you're just stuck in a shop,
that's right,
building it how you build it, right? And then the car ends up in your hands, you're at a racetrack, whatever, and you got to set the thing up to go from big tire and then to radial.
Right.
So now you got to separate the car.
Yep.
Right? And you go, this isn't going to work.
No, I'm going to have drive shaft issues.
You're going to have drive shaft issues unless we limit the amount of extension you have, and that's a whole nother set of issues.
Yeah, and then you're taking
right.
load away from the sidewall of the tire. You're not,
wheelies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why I'm saying, like, when you and listen, I didn't know this stuff when I was building cars. I had no idea. right? This is all learned. This is all.
Let me ask you this. When you say the angle of the tail, let's just call it tail shaft angle, right? Is it in relation to, because like obviously the weight, depending on the tire and what you're doing with the car, is going to determine the rake of the car. Let's say the levelness of the rocker, right?
It doesn't matter, because think about it.
I'm saying, is that tail shaft angle in relation to the car or the way it's going to sit when it's done?
No, so the engine is fastened into the chassis. So whatever rake, that angle is still there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because in relation to the rear end housing.
It's going to be the same there.
Right. So here's another thing. I get this all the time. I actually just had this conversation with a guy that's run pro stock, right?
Okay.
And he's working, I'm trying to help him with some radial stuff, right? Got a badass car. And we were talking about pinion angle, and he brought up the question.
Dude,
Listen.
I love this. I love this already. Hit him with it, Miller.
Okay,
Hit him with it, Miller.
So he basically, I'm telling him how I want to
Pinion angle doesn't matter. That's what he said to you, right?
Right. Well, he was telling me that he's like, hey, man, I've got the car jacked up and it's a little higher in the front, so I don't know how you want me to set the pinion angle. I'm like, yeah, I don't care where the car's jacked up. It doesn't make a difference.
Right.
He's like, how is that? And I'm like, are you setting your pinion angle based off the ground?
Mm-hmm.
He goes, yeah. I go, what does the ground have to do with the drive shaft?
Right.
What does it have to do? And he stopped for a minute. He's like, I don't know. And I'm like, well, okay, so now let me, and I went through it with him, okay?
Right.
So I got to take a drink of coffee if we're getting this
Yeah,
serious.
hit it, dude, and let me get one.
So here's...
This is your cup?
Yeah. We were looking for cups coming here, and Julie was like, they're probably all down at Bootlegs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah. So, okay, so let's get into a little pinion angle. The pinion angle is the relation of your drive shaft to your pinion.
Yep.
Or to your yoke, excuse me,
Mm-hmm.
okay? It is the difference between the two angles.
Right.
Okay, so...
How I do it is I will put an angle finder on the drive shaft.
That's correct.
And zero it.
That's correct.
And then I put it on the flat part of the
Yoke.
yoke, and that's my difference between the two.
Correct.
Okay, so I was right.
You're right.
Sick.
But this...
See, I'm smart.
Now we'll get into, do you know...
No.
Okay, so... So people, I hear this a lot, and again, this isn't a theory. I've proved this, right?
Okay.
I've done it on the car. So the pinion angle puts bite into the car, and the reason it puts bite into a car,
We've gone over this.
right, is because anytime you have a shaft spinning,
You sure you want to tell people this? Because 50% of the fucking people on the internet say drive shaft angle or pinion angle makes no difference for bite.
listen, everybody's going to comment that I'm the dumbest
I
MFer
would-
because they're going to say there's no way that happens, right?
I'll be in the comments fighting back.
Okay, so I'll give it out. I don't care.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's
Go for it. Let's
right?
hear it.
So, anytime you have a spinning shaft,
Mm-hmm.
it is trying to go straight. It is trying to spin straight.
Yep.
Okay, so if you have negative pinion angle, which it's creating a V.
So you're on the starting line.
Yes.
You got a V.
So if you when it's trying to spin straight, it's trying to pick the nose of the pinion up, which now you have to look at how the suspension is fastened, and it's putting load into the sidewall of the tire because it's shoving the tire into the ground.
Right.
It's the exact opposite when you have a car that has positive pinion angle.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't ever have any bite when the car, like the first thing that I look at when a guy tells me, man, I have no traction in the car, I'm really struggling getting traction. The first thing I look at is pinion angle.
Are you talking about radial specifically?
Anything. It
Okay.
doesn't matter.
Okay.
Listen, you have a shaft spinning. It doesn't change on what tire it is.
Let me ask you this question real quick. If you wanted more wheel speed out of a big tire car, is taking pinion angle away from it on the table?
You could, yeah. It's another tool.
Oh,
right?
shit.
Typically, what I see on a big tire car, when I add pinion angle, I'll see somewhere. If I go 1 degree, I'll see usually around 200 thousandths more compression in the rear shock. Now, listen, you're going to get the internet guys that are going to say that I'm all wrong, right? Because that's what the internet guys do. But it really works because I've got data, and here's the other thing. You know this. We've talked about this. The reason I know some of this stuff and can prove it is because I take really good notes on everything I do, right?
Oh God.
So
let me just stop everybody right there. Don't even ask Miller for help unless you have fucking notes.
yeah.
You better know 4-link spread, weight package, crank height. You better don't even fucking talk to him, because those are the first things he's gonna ask, and you're gonna look at him like, dude, and then that's it.
Yeah, you have. So the only really, the only way that you can, like, basically take this stuff and say that it actually worked one way or another is you have to take the notes on it, because you're going to forget in 2 runs, did I just change the pinion angle by 1 degree, or did I do something else?
Was it the run before that?
Right. So, like, you've seen my Excel spreadsheet that I've come up with.
Yeah, very impressive.
Right. And so
hyperlinks and everything.
Yeah. And so that is really useful when, like, you go, because here's what happens. When you're at the track, I don't have time to figure this out.
Right.
I don't have time to sit there and go, oh, let me see all the changes that the pinion angle does.
Right.
Right. Well, what I do is I come back home, and that's where I spend time looking, or when I'm on a flight, or when when my kid's driving and I've got my laptop open, right, and I'm looking at all these things. So, like, these changes I made produce this. Right. So now I know, how some of this works, right? And it's all little things like that, right? It's all little things. Like, I just had a conversation with a guy about a car that they're having a high profile car, professionally built car.
Yep.
They're having some struggles with the car going straight, okay? And I brought up, I said, I was talking to him, and I'm like, hey, man, listen, just like pinion angle, if the rear end is not centered in the car and it has a bunch of rear steer and you've not squared the car back up, when you get an angle in the drive shaft side to side, it's doing the same thing. It's loading and trying to push the rear to one side, which can make the car drive around.
Right.
He's like, I didn't think about that. Right.
Because the drive shaft wants to go straight.
Right. It's trying to make itself go straight. So it's putting load into whatever it has to make it try to straighten itself out.
You want to hear a funny story? I don't know if I've ever told you this, but, like, when me and John first met you, years ago, right? We were looking at some car, and we were looking at the 4-link of it, right? And I remember, like, just like you were like, well, it's not going to extend any further than the upper arm going flat. And then me and John, dude, seamlessly, we were like, yeah, no shit, dude, obviously. And I remember as soon as we got into the fucking car, we're like, yo, did you hear Miller talk about that fucking arm? I never once thought of that, dude. And me and John joke about that all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, like I said, it's just finding all this stuff from doing it.
It's just doing it, dude.
It's really just doing it.
Yeah.
I didn't know nearly the stuff. Like, I knew a lot about suspension geometry, but I didn't know the application of it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I can tell you by looking at it, and listen, I've built some cool stuff, right? I told you, like, I've built the first 4-wheel independent suspended Ford Expedition.
Yep.
Right? I know a lot about suspension stuff and geometry, but I didn't necessarily know how it applied in a drag race application.
Right.
Right? And so then when you start taking some of this stuff and figure it out, it just gives you an idea. And it's like, look, the one thing I can say about tuning and the guys, Steve Petty, right?
Yeah.
Like, look, that guy is
the man.
He's the man,
right?
We wouldn't be talking if it wasn't for Steve
100%.
Petty, because I wouldn't have had the opportunities that and all the knowledge that he gave me and taught me along the way, right?
Yeah.
But him and I can literally look at a shock graph, and we can tell you where that 4-link is in the car.
Right.
And so if you're not capable of doing that, or you're not confident in doing that, then you don't have a really good understanding.
No.
And you have to, and what I'm saying by that is you have to just start trying things so that you learn what that does, because that's what makes you efficient, to be able to walk over to a car when a guy's like, hey man, I'm having a problem. Right. And the first thing I'll say is, show me a picture of your shock graph. And I can tell him, you've got the 4-link too low.
Right.
You know what I mean? You don't have enough bottom bar angle. You've got too much spread, things like that. Right. And so that is crucial to being good at this game that we play, right? And you have to be well-rounded. You hear me say this all the time. You can't fix everything with a laptop.
No.
At some point, you got to shut the laptop and just
work on the race car.
Work on the race car.
I say it all the time. So I'll say this, right? when I started hanging out with you, I think the same as you, probably not to the same level, right? I understand how 4-links work, right? But like, you really brought me to the next level in that regards. Tuning an engine, it's almost like cause and effect, like some math. It'll get you there.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Well, I should say also reading spark plugs, which seems to be a fucking dying thing. I tell you, go on the internet.
Oh, I know.
People are saying that you don't need to read spark plugs.
I don't.
And that is pure insanity to me. Right? But my point is like, you could Google how to tune a fucking ECU. Mm-hmm. You really could.
Yeah.
Right? That's not what's going to win you races.
No.
Right? Like when I'm working with these remote customers, like the thing I tell them is I could slow it down, but you just need to work on the race car.
That's right.
Right? And that is really, dude, yeah, I don't know, man. Like every time you think you understand it, or me personally, I have no clue.
Yeah, but the other thing is if you think you know, I learn something every time I'm at the racetrack.
That's what I'm saying.
Right? You do. You just try different things and what I see out there's a lot of guys that can tune an engine, mm-hmm. but then have to rely on other people to mm-hmm. do chassis stuff. And I just don't think they're very well rounded. They're just not, because they can't make the decision. And look, if you're it goes on the other way too. Like if you're a suspension guy and you know shocks, springs, this, that, the other, but you're not involved with, this guy could be tuning the car and literally just overpowering it because he feels like you should be able to make it.
I see that
have
all the
enough
time.
bite
Right.
to leave it.
Hit it harder.
Yeah, hit it harder. Hit it harder.
Smoking the tire from the word go. Hit it harder.
Yeah, hit it harder. Like, because I know when I'm doing a burnout in a car, if I give it more gas, it doesn't ever stop doing the burnout.
Right. Yeah,
I mean, I've never
that.
seen that, but I'm like, so I should tell guys when they want to stop spinning the tire in a burnout to give it more gas.
Yeah, hit it harder.
Hit it harder.
Yeah.
Hit the throttle harder. It'll fix itself.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, it doesn't ever happen.
You got to hit it harder so the suspension works. I'm like, okay, dude. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I mean, there is some truth to that. But
listen, there's truth to, on a big tire, if you have the tire slow, you got to keep it slow. You can't out accelerate the tire. You'll run over it. It'll shake.
Right.
Right. So when you talk about guys say, it shook because it was too slow. Well, typically it's too slow off the button, off the release of the trans brake, and then your rate of acceleration is too fast.
Where a radial car would go straight on the parachute mount, a big tire car will shake.
It will shake.
Yeah.
100%.
Or you drive into a wheelie with a radial car, you drive into tire shake.
Correct.
That's interesting, right? I don't do much big tire stuff, right? It's weird. You got to hit them fucking hard. I was working on that nitrous car, the 5-inch board space car that I was talking to you about. Just a quick side story, right? So I get this customer. He contacts me from Qatar, I think, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically a Promod Corvette, like a top sportsman Corvette, like a '63 Corvette, big tire car, 748-inch, 5-inch board space, whatever, 4 or 5 kits of nitrous, right? And none of that scares me. The big tires, I don't really know, right? So I start tuning it. We make some good progress. Miller comes over here one day, and I'm like, hey, man, I'm working on this car, blah, blah, blah. It's in Qatar, the country, Qatar, right? And he goes, what kind of car is it? And I was like, I think it's a Vet. And he goes, is it a red 63? I'm like, yeah, I think so. I let me look at my pictures. I've got, it's a red 63. Oh, yeah, I know those guys. I'm like, why do you know those guys? Why the fuck do you know this random car?
Yeah.
But, that was funny.
Yeah. No, I mean, and you've seen it. Like, we were helping Blake, remember, at Lebanon Valley. And, like,
dude,
the thing was just too slow off the button. And, like,
that was my first time ever seeing that.
Right.
So I'm helping Blake Hirschbaum, the man, right? One day I'll get him on here. But he's got a couple small tire cars that I tune, and then he's got the Punisher car, the black Trans Am, 41X twins, E-Gates, Fuel Tech, big tire, and Miller mainly tunes that car. So when I travel with Blake and I'm tuning he's got at least 2 or 3 small tire cars with him at all times, which I'll take care of. But we'll also run the Trans Am, and either Jamie's remote or he's just not available because he's whatever, NHRA racing, right? So I'll help him with that. So one time we're at Lebanon Valley. You want to tell the story or should I?
No, you tell it.
So the Punisher car, the big tire car, it goes out there. and it's just a pile of shit, right? I forget. I think it just shook or it just was super slow, right? So I send Miller the data log. I tell him my thoughts on the deal. And so Miller's like, all right. Sends me a tune-up back. And, of course, me just being the nosy shitbag that I am, I just compare the two files, right? And it's like a 1.5 degrees of timing early, 3 pounds of boost, you know, and a car that runs 70 pounds of boost. So, like, 3 is not a lot, right? And maybe, like, whatever, 50 RPM on the plot or something. I'm talking changes you have to zoom in to see type shit. This fucking car goes out there. This thing's on the bars. It's got the fucking front end hike for 400 feet. One of the fastest passes at Lebanon Valley I've ever seen with my own 2 eyes. And my point is like, and what he's alluding to is keeping that tire happy is just the absolute game changer for the big tire stuff.
Yeah. And listen, you and I have talked about this a lot. Like when you have a car in a close window, if you go back, you were talking about it with John about Mike's car, like when you started taking that over. If you go back and look when we used to run 20s and 30s to where it is now, you think it's this mile.
No.
It is such small changes. And that's what guys getting into, because I didn't get it. And like I was just helping Ryan Martin the other night. He was running his Procharger small tire car, right?
Yeah. I watched Kai's video.
Yeah. And so
beat the dick right off of Kai.
Yeah, we did. But he was a little...
He was a little sporty. He was a little sporty. Yeah, he went a little red, but it was fast.
Yeah, it was fast.
I need to know how fast they're going, but we'll talk about that later.
So, anyways, like I had sent Ryan 2 files, and I said, I'm like, I know which one you're. Let me back up. He had a buy run, right? Yeah. So he's like, I think we should try to go a little bit faster. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah. And I'm like, all right. So I sent him 1 file, and I sent him another one, and then he calls me, and I go, well, I know you're going to put the faster one in. He's like, why are you saying that? And I'm like, well, Brian, I know how you are. You're always going to put the faster one in. So he calls me back, and he's like, Miller. I'm like, yeah. He goes, I'm proud of you. He's like, that thing was fast. He's like, you usually don't make changes like that. I'm like, well, there's nothing to lose at that point.
Right.
And it was funny because we just had this back and forth a little bit, but like Ryan will be super aggressive at times.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit more conservative because I don't want to lose a run.
We talk about it all the time, and this isn't completely true, but Miller's one of the things that he says. He's got a lot of great sayings, by the way, but you don't learn shit when you spin the tire.
Don't.
You do a little bit, and what you definitely learn is you had it too fucking hot.
The problem with spinning the tires, okay, you don't know exactly what to do to fix it.
Right.
You're going to look at it and say, okay, it's too fast here, too fast there. The car goes out in wheelies. I have a bunch of ideas of how to fix it, and I can usually fix it in a run.
Right.
If it goes out and say it just had a quiver in it and it shook, I know that is the spot that I've got to contend with.
Right.
But when you just smoke the tires, you don't know exactly how to fix it, and I hate losing. And also, there's something, everybody talks about it, there's something for momentum. If you start out, right, if you start out and you make runs, I can take a car, any of us can take a car and you make runs and you can progress that, right, and make it faster and faster by these little tiny tweaks that you won't really get in trouble with because the move is small enough, but it shows you 2 and 3 numbers, right? So if you start out, whatever, and you drop a 10th off by your 4th or 5th run, well, you've made a massive gain.
Yep.
But what you've also done is you've learned how to run all these different numbers and what the changes were. Right. And for me, that's crucial.
Well, it happened to me this past weekend working with Carlos. So I got to be careful here because it's a no-time car. But
all these. Right?
Yeah, all these cars are, right? So I might do some editing, right, if I fuck this up. But we made 9 runs total, right? So I get there. I had worked with Carlos remotely. It's the freight train car, black Trans Am, beautiful car. And I worked with him remotely. So it was a Miller project. Miller got a little too busy. He asked me to get involved. Of course, I would love to, right? I worked with him remotely, kind of got a little familiar with the car remotely. But then this last weekend, I was on site in Georgia with him. And so we go and make the first run. I got the thing way lean back, right? Because just like you're saying, I don't want to spin the tire, right? They had just scraped the track. It's glued up, but it's thin, right? So I go out there. It goes slow to 60, slowish, right? Great. Makes the trip. everything's great. Got some data.
Got stuff
right?
to work off of.
So on the second run, and this was I didn't have enough experience with this particular car, so I didn't know what it was going to pick up, right? Now there is some math that you have taught me, you know, at certain points that like this much drive shaft gets you this much. So I had all that in place, right? But it tried to go way fast, and it left. It made it out whatever 20 feet, had the nose up. It was going to ride, and it kicked the tire at like 30 feet, right? And just like Miller was saying, it took the momentum right out of took the wind right out of my sails. And thank God I've been in this situation. Thank God that like I have somebody like Miller, right? Because I was able to literally, all right, let's not get fucking spun out here. Let's not waste the next 3 runs because I'm scared of that one run. Right?
Yeah.
And I was able to do that. And the next, 7 runs, the car ended up going really fast for the combination. And
and you made a bunch of progress.
Made a lot of progress. Right. So,
and that's why, you know, working with customers too, I always tell these guys that I would much rather be with them for a weekend and have 12 solid runs, and learn the car and learn what it takes to gain, let's just call it. In the Pro Mod world, 2 and 3 numbers is a pretty good move, right? So, you know, let's say you're working with a car and you start out running a 369, and by the end of your test session, you're running 361 to 360 flat. Well, that's some massive gains, right?
If anybody's been paying attention to a World Series of Pro Mod, that goes from not in the field to number 8.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right. And that is on a whole nother level of you know,
right,
very difficult racing over there.
That's insane.
It's insane, right? So, but that being said, like, that's why I try to be a little bit more conservative, we'll say, and make these smaller changes so that I keep accumulating data and have runs to show. Because at the end of the day, at the end of the weekend, a guy pays you, and let's just say he's got one real badass run, and the rest of our aborted runs, like, you really didn't learn anything, you know what I mean? And it's like you just don't have the consistency with the car. And listen, there are times that you go out.
Oh my God.
We were just talking about this. Like, I was at the radio race, and it was like I felt like I couldn't do any wrong.
I just want to make sure it's recording. Yep. Sorry.
So, like, we were at Duck's race, and I was able to take, you know, 3 LDR cars and bring them to the semifinals.
Right.
And then 2 of the cars are in the finals. So I'm winning regardless, right?
Yeah.
And that's you just, it's just an awesome weekend,
dude.
Right? Everybody. I had a brand new screw blower car in RVW. We ran 355 with it, the first outing with the car.
That's sick.
Ned Dunphy, right? So, like, everything was just like, it just worked.
Right.
Then you go to World Series of Pro Mod and struggle with a car that, like, I felt really good about, right? And we had made a bunch of progress, you know, and like, I had run a 358 the last race in the Winter Series, and then I'm struggling to go a 364. You know, and we find out after the fact that, like, there's some, and I don't want to say it's transmission, because it's just, unfortunately, the transmission ended up having a lot of runs on it, and something is broke in it, right? And it just would not accelerate, right? And so you have a weekend like that, and you're like, man, it just takes the wind out of your sail, and that stuff bothers the hell out of me. Like, I am not that guy. Like, you're never going to see me make a bad run and turn around with a smile on my face. No. Like, I just don't care, because that day, I should just hang it up. I'm done.
Yeah.
Right?
It weighs on you heavy, dude. I don't know. You know, we always joke, must be nice, right?
Oh, yeah.
Must be nice. You ever want to piss Miller off, walk up to him and say, must be fucking nice, buddy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That life of yours must be nice.
Yeah.
But, yeah, dude, that stuff keeps me up at night.
Oh, it does.
Especially when it's my mistake.
Yeah.
When I beat myself, dude, oh my God.
And you know, one thing, my son John, he works with me, and one thing I've told him in this racing, there's a couple things. It gains people's respect, and you just own things, right? When you make a bad move or make a mistake, just own it. Mm-hmm. Because the problem is, there's so many variables in these race cars. Let's face it, I could bullshit you and tell you that it did
you would
something.
never know.
You wouldn't know.
No.
Right? You wouldn't know. But that's not my deal. Like, if I make a bad call, I own it. I made a bad call.
Yep.
Right? it's just the way that I look at, like, when drivers beat themselves up for red lighting or cutting a bad light. Like, I don't really get on them because how can I? It's human nature.
They already know. You don't need to beat them up.
They know, right? But the other thing is, I don't want a guy that I'm working for hammering on me because I made a mistake. Right? So I'm certainly not going to do it to the driver. But it's a give and take. You got to look at that, because I beat myself up more than anybody's going to beat.
You. The way I think about it is like, okay, you hire me to come onto your team. It's a fucking team.
Yeah.
Right? We're going to live or die by this whole deal together, right?
That's right.
So if you want to start throwing blame around,
you got to go.
I'm out.
You got to go.
I don't want to be anywhere near that.
You're going to see in the last couple of years, I've definitely learned this, that I just don't have patience for it. Like, if you're going to break my balls about stuff or claim your car wasn't fixed right or whatever, I just don't have patience for it. Like, that's cool. I did something for you, and you don't care, or you don't think it was worth it, or you don't appreciate it. I got to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just don't want to be around it. I don't want to be around it.
I've been fortunate enough where I haven't really been in that situation much. Now, listen, I've made some mistakes tuning cars, right?
We all have.
We all have, right? But luckily I have surrounded myself with guys that are just like, yeah, we'll get her fixed up and we'll get back out there, If
anybody is out there thinking they're going to go have like an unbelievable weekend, week after week after week, it's not reality.
It's not racing. Listen, if it was easy, everybody would be fucking winning, right?
That's right. Yeah, there's only one winner.
There's only one winner
at the end of the weekend, but there's World Series of Promod. There's 83 cars on the property. There's only
bad motherfuckers,
and there isn't one car that you're taking for granted.
Nope.
Right?
There is not one car out of that 83 cars that can't win that whole event.
The thing about that race that's so insane, I raced PDRA, like those cars back to probably like number 60 would all qualify for PDRA racing, but they didn't get into that show. It's insane.
It's insane, dude.
Right? I've got guys that ran their personal best with cars, and it was a respectable run. 364 is not.
You're thinking Rojas.
Well, Rojas got in. Rojas went a 63. I had been the fastest I've been with Rojas's car, which is the Mech Tech Corvette.
Yep.
Isaias Rojas, great group of guys. But I've been a 361 with that car. Mm-hmm. We ended up going 363. We got in the show.
Okay.
But
where'd that land you?
Oh, horrible.
Out of 32 cars. What's that?
I think we were like 28th or 29th, which...
So, and number one qualifier is what, 358?
Yeah, I believe so. 58 or 57.
So 58 to 63.
No. 32. 32 cars.
I'm saying a 58 to a 63
okay. Yeah.
gets you from number one
right
to number whatever, 20 something.
Yeah, it was far back.
Yeah.
Right? Which the way that race is handled, it doesn't really matter. You just have to qualify because it's
in the show.
It's a chip draw. It makes no difference.
I love that.
So the key is getting into the show. That's it.
Because then it's anybody's game.
It is. And listen, out of those 32 cars, there's no easy round.
No.
I don't care who you have,
Nope.
who you line up. They're all badasses.
Yeah.
Right? They're all there.
Any one of them could send you home.
100%.
That's so sick.
And the guy that will qualify 32, Spencer Hyde, won what is it, 2 years now or whatever. I think he qualified 32, and he won the whole deal.
That's sick. I love to hear it.
And Spencer's, like, they're
always
competitor.
fast.
Mark Savage helps those guys, you know what I mean? Those guys are they're badass racers.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Everybody there is badass.
Yeah.
And it's just, is it your weekend? Is it not? No, it wasn't my weekend.
Why? Did you struggle?
Oh, man.
So wait, which car were you with?
So I had Rojas's car, which we got in.
Yep.
I had Travis Harvey's car.
Yep.
What's
the combo? So first of all, what's Rojas's combo?
Rojas is a MH7 with a Procharger setup on it. Travis Harvey is a Noonan 4.9 with a screw blower.
Got it.
I had Robin Roberts, which I was helping those guys. That has the new Hart's Charger on it, so we were running that.
Oh, how is that thing?
Yeah, it's badass.
That's a badass?
Yeah, really badass. I mean, it depends. If you ask Dan Schoenig, he would tell you it's a piece of shit.
Dude, I wrote 14 comments and I was just like, I don't want to get involved. But that was egregious.
Oh,
that was some slime ball shit, dude. I don't know why.
It's funny, all the people that reached out to me like in DMs and told me all the shit stories of that guy.
I don't even care about that. Yeah, right.
Well, here's the thing I have a problem with.
Why put anybody down in this deal?
So why would you put somebody down that's putting a bunch of money into our racing,
Our sport.
the
things that pay his fucking bills.
Right. And it's an American company. They're building everything in-house. Like, how do you shit on a guy like that?
So we know Dustin. You know Dustin really well. I know Dustin pretty well, right? And he's the fucking man.
He is
right?
awesome.
But I don't even think that has anything to do with how I feel, right? Like, if he was saying the same shit about another company, I would have thought he was still an asshole.
There's no doubt. How can you not?
Right? Because like
look
at
at
first,
the comments. Look at the comments. Like you can't even make sense of why you would talk crap about a company.
Even if, and I don't think much of what he said was true, but even if it was all true, let's just let him figure it out.
Right. What is your point of bringing this up? Like, even Procharger. Look, I said in that post, like, I can't say a bad thing about Procharger.
No, it got nothing to do with Procharger.
I've won NHRA championship and Promod with Procharger. I've won, I don't even know how many radio races, big radio races.
Well, you guys just won the Outlaw Series with Blevins' car.
Right, we won the championship with Blevins' car.
Right.
Like, Blevins' car right now is on just a roll.
It's on a tear, huh?
Oh, it is. It is, right?
Sick.
Galobo's car, Steve Halpern's car. Like, there's so many cars, Chris Thorne and NHRA. Like, I've had so much success with Procharger cars. I'm never going to talk bad about them.
No,
I've done. And listen, I don't go out there and say to the Procharger guys, hey, you need to change this. That's not the thing. I just look. You were there. We brought a car here for the first time to start testing Hart's turbos. Right. The guy's awesome. When you meet him, you just want to be around him. He's just a great dude.
Because he's about that life.
Yeah,
dude. So just what Miller's saying is, we brought a car here onto my dyno. Hart's wanted to get into these. I think at the time they were making the really big turbos. That's Larry Larson was running the big 140 millimeter deal, right? But he wanted to get into like the Ultra and the X size, 76, 88, 85 millimeter deals. So we brought a car into the dyno, and Dustin, from the owner of Hart's, shipped us a bunch of turbos, flew in, right?
That's right.
And we ran a car here. It was a sorted out car, and we ran it here for 2 days. And we would make a run right from the trans brake, gates pinned, 100 pounds on the gate, and we would swap a turbo. And he stayed here for 2 days, sitting in the back here, literally building turbos, torque wrenches, dial indicators, ripping them apart, compressor wheel, turbine wheel, housings, and we figured out a badass unit.
That's right. And there it goes again. Like, but he brought all these things to the table. He spent a bunch of time getting us parts, and we all learned something that week.
Dude, I learned so much.
Right, you did, right? But that's a guy that.
And this is the guy that's making a centrifugal blower, like a Procharger.
Right.
He wanted to come to market with his own, right? And this guy Schoenig, that does all the carbon fiber stuff, just kind of got on the internet and blasted him, right? Because I don't even think what he was saying was true, but I think what he was saying is that they had some failures on their first time out, which they should, but they didn't.
But that's the thing, right? So that's what's really I have a problem with, because you're making false statements, right? The Charger has never come apart.
Right.
Every time we run it, Dustin takes the thing apart, because he's so friggin' anal on everything and thinks he wants to make this thing last like forever, right?
You're like, Dustin, it's never gonna last.
If he sees the smallest bit of wear on stuff, then he's like, all right, we got to change something. You know what I mean? We've never had a failure. Like, we've never had one explode.
Right.
We've never had a wheel come apart. Nothing like that. It's just more or less we find things that start to show wear over whatever runs. We've made 1 million runs on the dyno with the thing.
Right.
Because Dustin's got his own 6,000
sick
mainline now.
Is he putting tractors on that thing?
I don't know what he's gonna do. You never know. He'll probably just build one just to put it on.
Yeah.
So, like, we've tried all these things, and it's basically a clean slate. There's a lot of differences in the blower, and it was more at the time looking to see if he could make something that's a little more durable. Could it run higher RPM? are there advantages there by running at higher RPM, higher shaft speeds, right? But I don't, and even Procharger's like, man, it's good for competition. It just makes everybody work harder, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I just look at it the same as there's plenty of turbo manufacturers out there.
And they're all doing well.
And they're all doing very well.
Yep.
And they all make great power.
Right.
And everybody has a choice.
Right.
Right. So what is wrong with
more opportunities for sponsorship, more opportunities for advancement, dude? It's a win for everybody.
Yeah. And I mean, look at Mark Mickey. Mark Mickey was with Garrett for years, right? And got hooked up with Dustin with Harts. And I mean, he's got the baddest turbo pro mod out there, you know. And now Mickey's putting these packages together for guys, and most of them are being run with the Hart stuff. Jay Cox.
Is Victor's on Harts?
So Victor has Precisions, which his cars run great,
dude.
Right. So there's a good point right there. Right. They run fast with the Harts. They run fast with the Precision.
Right.
You just have options.
Right.
Right. Victor does a lot of business with Precision.
Oh, that's right.
Right. So
yeah, he's probably a wholesaler for Precision.
And it makes sense for him, right? So but he also talks to Dustin all the time, and he said, you know, you can't talk to Dustin and not think he's a good, because he's just a great dude.
Did I tell you? I just saw him recently, maybe U.S. Street or whatever, right? Yeah. And I was like, Dustin, I need some fucking hats. I love his hat. Am I wearing one now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And I'm like, I need some hats. And he's like, bro, and he's got the Southern accent. He's like, brother, I don't got any on me, right? And I came home from the race,
and they were there.
Then there was a box here.
Yeah.
So he dug through, got my shipping address to my shop, right? Like he, you know what I mean?
From when he shipped us turbos.
From when he shipped us turbos. That's what I'm saying. And he shipped me, and I have a box of hats. Yeah. So I can't keep bothering because he sent me like 8 hats.
Yeah. So we run the Charger on Robin Roberts' brand new Promod. We've gone, let's see, where did we go? We went 366 at 204.
Okay.
Right? Very respectable run.
Right.
The car has...
What trim? Big tire trim?
Yeah. Yep. It's a MH7 565.
Got it.
You know, the normal platform first centrifugal. Back aft, I think it went 119 with a 7, where I think the fastest Procharger stuff was like 118 with a 6. But the cars were much faster up front. You know, those things are very linear. You got to get them going up front.
You got to get them fast.
Right? And listen, on paper, but if you look at what a typical Procharger will back half running a 366, we're within a half a number.
Right.
Okay? So the power's there. I'm not worried about it making power.
Right.
I've never been worried about it.
Just you got to work on the race car.
You just got to, you know. So, but we ran it. No issues there. Larry Larson, he made his personal best run. He went a 369 with his car.
Yep.
You know, he's his car has transitioned from no prep, and he's slowly getting it into like, you know, like what Kai Kelly's doing and learning stuff. I helped him with a little bit on the fueling and stuff like that, because the Charger is a little bit different, and it accelerates the wheel a little bit different, makes a little bit more boost off the button.
Why is it you're seeing big fueling changes going from Procharger to Harts?
So it makes more boost right off the button as of right now. It does. At the same RPM, it makes more boost.
Because he's got more shaft speed because the gear set's different?
No, it's the same speed.
Because you're speed limited in that class, or no?
No, you're not speed limited. But
because it's all outlaw stuff.
So, look, you're trying to... You can't make the shaft speed a bunch faster and compare it to something else that's at a lower shaft speed. What is your comparison?
Right. You're spinning it harder.
You're spinning it harder, right?
This isn't fair. Right.
So for all the data that we have, we basically are using...
You're using the gear sets you would use.
That's correct. It's not the same exact gear set, because his transmission step up is geared differently. So numerically, your end result of the speed of the centrifugal is the same as it is in the Procharger, right?
And he's doing that on purpose so he can get back-to-back data to get himself a baseline.
That's correct.
Brilliant. I love that.
Right. So
because he could just spin it hard as shit and say this thing's fast as fuck.
Right. But it's not not apples for apples. It's not, right? So there's things that it does down low. It makes more boost on the chip. Yep. It accelerates and makes a little bit more. It doesn't really make any more boost out the back. It just does it quicker, which is what we see with his turbos, if you think about it. Right? Where his turbos were much faster through the middle than the peak numbers.
The peak numbers were negligible. We could have kept working on any one of those turbos to get them to match.
But on the racetrack,
Well,
they really show.
We even saw it on the dyno because
Right.
we were running it from the brake, right? So we would run the same ramp, same blah blah blah, just like he was saying with the with the centrifugal stuff, right? We were doing the same thing here, right? I don't even think we had a ramp. I think we just had 100 on the gate.
We did.
So the ramp was the turbo.
That's correct.
Right? And the biggest gains we saw were through the middle. From the word go to where it made its peak power, the Hart just picked it up sooner.
Which
right?
translated on the racetrack.
Which it translates on the racetrack.
Right.
If you have a good race car.
Yes. If you have a car capable of taking that power. But
right.
yes. Yeah. So it's very similar. And I think that's just his design on his wheels. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Right, for sure. I mean, yeah, we tried a lot of stuff. It was like blade count, blade pitch. You know, the size always remained the same.
Correct.
Again, for back-to-back comparisons, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was fun.
And so he's got with NHRA, which it looks like the approval is going to go through. Like, so what they were waiting on is one of it. He's got a new casting for, because the centrifugal originally designed with a billet cover. Mm-hmm. Well, all the series basically put a weight penalty on anything with a billet cover. So he ended up having the covers cast.
Why?
Nobody knows.
Is there a performance advantage to billet in that regards?
I don't. So here's the thing. I know that the spec is out there, right? The blower is built to spec, right? For instance, he had to send all his documentation and models to NHRA, because the NHRA blower is different than what we would run in Pro Boost or World Series, right? You can run what they call a 140-1. In NHRA, we have to run a standard 140.
Right.
Okay, so the wheel is a little bit smaller, right? There's some differences in it, and it makes about, in an outlaw trim, the 140 to 140-1 is probably, let's say, right around a 2.5 pound difference.
Okay.
A boost, right?
Yep.
NHRA now slows them way down. We have to run, a spec gear set in it, so it slows the blower way down.
So not only apples to apples, it makes 2.5 pounds less a boost, but now you also have to slow the gear set down.
That's correct.
Got it.
Right. So he sent over all his specs on the blower.
Yep.
To make sure, and everything was approved. He had to make some small change on it. No big deal. The only thing they were waiting is the cover, because it was being casted. He didn't have the covers available to send to them,
right,
which he has recently done. So it looks like that's going to be, again, over there, that's going to be another option, and we were pressed for a little bit of time of getting all the stuff submitted so that it could be approved for the 2025 race season.
And it's going to be, you think?
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be.
I would imagine that's probably a game changer for Dustin and this deal.
It is. And so to give you an idea, that is the blower that we have to run, the sizing of the blower that we have to run in like an LDR configuration.
Yep.
Okay. So
the 140, not -1.
That's correct.
Got it.
So we may do some testing. I've got 3 different LDR cars, so we may do some testing with that size blower to see what our stuff looks like. Yeah, what we can do with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of LDR, right? Not Blevins, Halprin.
Yeah.
With the gray Mustang.
Yeah.
John was telling me about the opening in the front.
Right.
And you guys were struggling.
So, yeah. So,
because this is something that we've talked about a lot, and it's just really hard to prove. And I feel like you were able to dead nuts prove it on this deal.
So we have struggled with this car since the beginning of it not making boost.
Well, let's talk about the car real quick. So, Steve Halprin, right?
Yes.
Steve Halprin buys who built the car originally? Larry Jeffers, notchback Fox body Mustang. This thing, sick. Dude, the rockers are fucking this far from the ground. Yeah, this thing's a bad Larry.
I think it's one of the best looking notches out there.
Without a doubt, right? Jeffers killed it on this deal. They bought it as a roller. I think it was a small block turbo deal before, but they bought it as a roller. It goes to John and John Little, the guy that was on here before. It goes there. John and Jamie. Did you just make the actual mid plate work that was there with some weird anglage?
So again, getting into it, we changed the angle of the motor on it. We didn't have to cut the whole firewall out of it. We were able to make it work by just creating spacers welded into the car to change the angle a little bit, right?
Like wedge spacers.
Yeah.
Because from what I remember, and I don't know if you want me to say this, right, but you basically, from where the firewall was, I think you had to tilt the front of the motor, the crankshaft down. The
up.
Oh, it was the other way.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so the crank pulley had to go up.
Yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
And you were able to do that with some tapered spacers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, grafted into the firewall and everything.
Right.
You know, so that it would still adapt. Because we were back and forth of where we were going to make a mid plate that basically had angle machined into it. Right. But then it ends up being a one-off mid plate if you ever had to replace it. Right.
It's a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big deal. So the thing to do to fix it the easiest way was just create the wedge into the mid plate area.
Right.
And then we had to redo the transmission mount and stuff like that.
But
it wasn't, you know, we were putting a MH6 in it, you know, Procharger center.
The alternative was cut the whole car apart.
Yeah, and we weren't doing that.
Yeah,
the car's too nice to do that.
It's gorgeous.
And we sat there, and it honestly, it took a day or two, just like brainstorming. John and I were brainstorming, and I'm like, okay, well, this is what it needs to be.
How do we get there?
How do we get there? You know, and again, the car, that is not something on Larry, like that. The car was built for a different transmit. Yeah, so it goes from one combination, like we were just talking.
Because it was a small block turbo, and I think it had a Liberty in it.
It did, right. So that's where all these things come into play, like we were talking earlier, right? So I just said, this is something that we have to contend with right now. I don't want to put the car together and then be like, oh man, we should have changed it, right? So car came out awesome.
Unbelievable.
I mean, we turnkeyed it. It came out great. Now, the car, listen, it runs good. The car runs great up front. We've had a struggle with the car, and there's been various things that we keep finding with it, right? And
it's always you think you find a smoking gun.
You do, right? Well, we found all these problems that were a problem,
right?
But they haven't given us the big gain, right?
You found problems, but they weren't the problem.
Right. So the thing has definitely been down on boost. We ended up smoking the car, put a smoke machine on it. We found that like around the V-band flanges for the blow-off valves and where it seals to the Procharger, like there was some powder coat on the backside that was causing the clamps not to seal tight.
And the issue is that you couldn't get the boost that you were supposed to have out the back, and ultimately not the mile an hour.
That's right. It wouldn't run through the middle. Like it would run great up front, and it would run as fast as like Blevin's car up to the middle, but then it would just fall off like 2 or 3 numbers.
Right.
You know, so we found all that. We found all these problems. Then we started having some issues like with some bearings in the converter that we think we may have got a bad batch of bearings because we were having some struggles there. But like all this stuff is happening at the same time, right? So anyways, I was looking at it. We were like exhausted all things that could be the boost. So I was like, you know what? We're on a test session. I told the starter and stuff, I said, hey, I'm going to come up here without the nose on the car. Because I'm like, what better way to diagnose it, right?
Right.
And I'm like, if this doesn't do it, then we can just get it out of our head that this is the problem. Right. We run the car, and it makes almost 2 more pounds of boost. So John had come with us. John Little had come with us, and he was helping on the car, which was huge to have him there because I don't have the time to do this stuff in between, right? So we just started cutting in the opening, and basically we kept cutting the opening until we got it to make the same boost as it did without the nose on it. And then the car started picking up. Now, it didn't pick up all of it.
Right.
Then as we're running, we found another issue. We put a different transmission in it, and then the car started really coming to life. Like we went the last run we made, we went 394 at 189 mile an hour, but it touched wheelie control. It actually didn't wheelie. The sensor picked up a false, and it pulled 10 degrees out of it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so it would have been probably, I'm going to say a 93, 92, because it pulled 10 degrees for probably 0.3 of a second, you know, which you can see it slow the motor down. It's got to reaccelerate. So there was a number or number and a half in it, which, look, we kind of had been stuck at like a 397, 398. And then, I would make a move on it, and the thing would go out and would slow down. I'm like, what is going on with this thing? Like, why is this thing kicking my ass, right? So I think we're over that hump. I think we've got everything figured out. And we basically just built an eyebrow into the the existing
right, because it had
it
had the outlaw style front bumper.
Had an outlaw style front bumper, and it had an inlet that we've run on other cars before, and we haven't had an issue. But we ran it on a later generation Mustang, like 2000, 2001.
SN95.
Yeah, and I believe really what it was is that it had a little bit more overhang. So the angle that it transitioned was much steeper on the Fox body.
So when I talked to John about it, and it was probably, it must have been right around when you really get, oh no, it was right after Lights Out or whatever, the test session. What it looked like to me was happening was that it was hitting the bottom of the
Inlet.
Yeah, well, of the outlaw front bumper, right, the part closest to the ground, and the air was breaking over it instead of going into it. Yeah. Is that what you think was happening?
There was, listen, I don't know exactly what it is. I just know as we started opening,
it seemed like it just was like a low pressure around the blower.
So it's interesting because if you take the area of the opening that we used, it has the same area.
I don't think it was an area issue at all.
No, and it very well could have been that. But as we opened up the top side, right, and put like this eyebrow in it, all of a sudden, and listen, it wasn't like it was 10 pounds down in boost, but 2 pounds is a lot. You know what I mean?
When you're talking about, and most people know this, when you're talking about class racing.
Yeah, exactly. You can't afford to be
everything is ran up. You know, people will ask me, like, what are these guys doing? I'm like, the gates are pinned. Yeah. They're doing everything it can do.
That's right.
Yeah, so 2.5 pounds is a lot.
Yep. So that helped. We changed transmission, found some stuff in that, and the car started. So I'm excited to get back out with it. I really believe there's no reason that car shouldn't be running 80s. Right. You know what I mean? It's got all the equipment to do it. Right. The car makes really nice runs. You know, John and I did some aero stuff because I know we've had this issue before, again, being at the racetrack, I've seen this, that the Fox body Mustang coupe has some aero, weird stuff going aero when they start going above like 170 to 180 miles an hour.
Remember when at the beginning of this deal, I was just like, you know shit that you should forget?
Yeah.
This is one of them. Why do you know that an 89 Fox body coupe, specifically Fox body coupe, has aero issues?
I don't know. I don't know why I know.
Okay, explain the aero issues of a Fox body coupe.
So what happens is the angle of the back window on the coupes. What I believe is happening is the air comes and it comes off at such a steep angle that it hits the trunk lid and essentially runs over the wing. So you have very little downforce.
You're saying it comes off the roof.
Right.
Hits the trunk lid before the wing, and then pitches
breaks,
over the wing.
Right?
Yeah.
So Larry and the guys had put basically deflectors on the back window, which we had done this years ago on a 67 Mustang when I worked with Jason Enos. We had put basically a 90-degree flange down the back window to help the air not spill over to the side of the roof and keep the airflow on the back of the car. And it worked. I mean, I could see it in the shock graph, right? So Larry did the ones on the back window, but again, the back window is extremely steep, right? So the air coming down. So then I'm looking at the car one day, and it had a very small wing on it. And I had told John when we got the car there that, like, look, we're going to make a different side panel, spill plate for it because they're too small, right? And so we redesigned that. And then I'm looking at the car, and I'm like, you know what? If we adapt that channel, that 90-degree flange, into a flange on the deck lid that fastened to the wing, now you've created, a wing that's like 40 inches long.
So when you say 90-degree channel, you mean it's coming off the surface of the car?
Yeah.
With a channel.
Well, it's just a 90-degree bend, okay, and it's fastened to the car, and it just creates a rail. It's just a rail. So now the air can't spill over the side of it. When it comes down...
The fact that it's 90 degrees is not significant, though. It's just an upright.
It is an upright.
But you're using the 90 degree to fasten it.
Yeah,
okay, because I didn't know if you had the 90 degree like this to get the air to go underneath it.
No, it's 90 degrees. It's just fastening. It's like a piece of angle.
Yeah.
Right? So we fastened that and did it. And, I mean, this car makes beautiful runs. You know, and it's been 190 miles an hour. I mean, he doesn't move the steering wheel in it.
Right.
The car makes great runs.
Right.
You know, so we even started working with lowering the wicker because I believe it's got so much
downforce now.
It's got so much airflow over the back of the car that we can start lowering the wing. Because I wasn't sure if I wasn't certain that the wing was causing some of the back half numbers because it sat the car down so much going down the track.
You know, I've dealt with this on a couple different cars, and I've talked about it with you quite a few times, that you get these cars with a bunch of wicker on them, and they just shove the thing to the ground.
Right.
And, you know, you almost can't even replicate it, right? Because you can't even really compress the springs that much when you're in the pits. But you're like, I wonder what, like, are the tires rubbing? Is the drive shaft fucked up? Like, dude, this thing is so much lower than it ever is any other time. Who knows what it's doing?
Well, and on a radial car, there's advantages to that because, you know, if you look at those cars go down the racetrack, typically the back end is way high, which it's catching all that air. If you can get the cars to sit down, you know, where they roll the rear suspension back down, then you gain some mile an hour. You know what I mean? And ultimately, that's what I'm trying to achieve. When I set my four-link stuff, I want it to basically look like a rainbow. I don't want the shock to go and top out and stay all the way up at, you know.
I hate cars that look like that.
Well, the other problem is when you top the shock out, you're basically running on a solid suspension. Yep. So the car won't deal with bumps.
Right.
And it has a hard time dealing if you're turning lockups on. It wants to spike the tire. And in a turbo application, you're applying so much power out in the middle of the track that it's not as consistent if the shock isn't.
It's got no compliance.
It's got nothing. It basically all it's doing is working off the sidewall of the tire.
Right.
You know?
I've noticed from working with you enough that on the really fast radial stuff, you don't run a ton of separation. You don't run, like, I see some of these cars, they've got to have fucking 7 inches.
They do.
And on your...
It's not my approach. I just don't approach it that way.
Your fast shit doesn't... Because, like, Rivera's car, Nauman's car, Carlos's car, all these cars that I've gotten involved in, you know, it's funny. I was telling Miller when I got home from working with Carlos, like, you know, I meet Carlos, I see the car for the first time, so obviously I'm going to take my notes, right? Because if I'm going to talk to Miller about this, I better fucking come with notes, right? So I'm measuring the crank height, I'm measuring the front travel, I'm making sure that this is that, and blah, 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 and we got the thing on the Pro Jacks, and, you know, the wheels are off of it, and I slide up into there, and I'm not a 4-link expert by any means, but I've been working with Jamie enough to know how he typically runs shit. And I'm not going to go into detail about how this one is put together because I don't want to put Jamie's shit out there and I don't want to put Carlos's shit out there, but it's not how I typically see Jamie run stuff. And so we still need to finish that conversation because I still need to wrap my head around it. But all I can tell you is that the shock data looks great.
Yeah.
But looking at the 4-link, I wouldn't think we would get there.
Right.
So
and that's it. Just, you know, trying stuff and doing all that on different cars gives you, you know, what it, you know, I have a goal of what I'm looking for the shock to do. You know what I mean? And typically if I can get it to have that rainbow, it'll apply and it'll accept a bunch more power than if the shock is topped out. And listen, there's guys out there that fly with their shock topped out and
8 inches in the air.
Yeah, listen, and they make it work. I'm not saying that I just am telling you my approach is doing it this way.
You want to know what I really think that is? And I think that they rely on the racetrack a lot.
Well, learning how to run a radial car in marginal conditions, I think, is what sets the guys that really have their stuff together. You know what I mean? Because when the track...
Get down in the heat.
Get down in the heat.
Get down in the sunlight, dude.
There is no better feeling running radial cars in the heat when everybody's struggling and you lay down a number and it's like you walk off that starting line like you're 10 feet tall.
Dude.
It's awesome.
Unbelievable.
Those to me are the most impressive and the runs that I'm most proud of. Like, because at nighttime, listen, you have to have your stuff together to go really fast, but you definitely have a bigger window for error. When
you can do some shit.
You can get away with some stuff.
Yep.
But when 3/4 of the class smokes the tire and you lay down a number.
I mean, that's how we won the Warrior Championship with Nama's car this year.
Right.
I mean, we would typically be amongst the 1 or 2 fastest cars on the property, but the reason we won that motherfucker is because that car never aborted a run.
Right.
So they, we would go into eliminations in the middle of the day, 135, 140 degree track temps. I remember we were at VMP, dude. Tyler Cresson comes down. Everybody was kicking the tire. We went out there. We went at like a 21. The car goes like an 18 when it's all in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
there's no better feeling,
dude. I'm just like, put it in the box, dude. I'm not going to waste my time testing anymore. We kept testing.
Like that was one thing. Like Manny's car, when I was racing with Manny and his Pro 275 car, that thing was a weapon.
Yeah, that thing was a weapon early for Pro 275 too.
And I remember being at Yellow Bullet and the guys at Cecil. Like I'm telling you, everybody smoked the tire in the class.
And you're like, were you even worried?
No.
You were worried.
No,
you weren't worried,
dude. We went up there and went 374, and it was like mic drop.
Yeah,
like because everybody was complaining about the track, and Anthony. Right. Guy that runs the does starter up there, he came over and shook my hand. He's like, thank you. He goes, because now nobody can bitch that it's the track. You know,
you didn't just get down. You went down fast.
No, like it was super,
how fast was Pro going at the time?
I think number one qualifier was like a 69
at night.
Yeah, no, that car was a weapon. And honestly, I feel like Blevin's car now,
that thing's a unit, dude.
Right? We were in Alabama. Mm-hmm. We were in Alabama, same thing. Everybody was struggling to get down the racetrack. And, dude, we dropped the bomb. The track was like, I think it was like 112 degrees, and we went 389.
Yep.
And it just hauled ass, right? And it wheels up like just perfect, right?
Love that feeling.
And I remember we were swinging weight and
dude,
like moving massive amounts of weight in the lanes. Like, that's what people don't understand.
Dude,
like,
they don't get it.
Like, when I tell them I move weight, I have guys, I moved 5 pounds. I'm like, yeah, dude, that's nothing. Like,
I tell people, Naman's car specifically, and I keep bringing up Naman's car because I've got a lot of laps on it, right? Yeah. Years of tuning that car. From day to night, it's about 80 pounds.
Right.
80 pounds we move throughout that car. High, low, back, front, up, down, shocks. I mean, we made a change on the 4-link once this year. But, I mean, that whole combo changes because of that.
I remember when we started racing, Ken got the Corvette from Skinny Kid.
And C7.
Right, which is Robbie Globo's car now. And that one was the biggest weight moves we had ever made because we were trying to run, at the time, 10.5 with the radial tire. Yep. And I didn't ask them to change anything in the track. I was doing what I could to make that tire run how they prepped it.
Yeah, you ruined that. You guys ruined that.
We did. It was awesome. It was cool. Yeah. But from day to night at Cecil, I would move 160 pounds in that car.
Yeah.
Insane, right? When you talk about it, you're like, 160 pounds. It's like, again, those notes that we talked about, you would never have the confidence to move that much weight.
No, that'd be crazy.
If you didn't have saying, well, this is the recipe.
Right.
So,
yeah, we struggled to figure this out, but I promise you we figured this out. So when we were running Yellow Bullet this year, first of all, Yellow Bullet and me don't get along. I've fucking been in the finals twice, lost in the finals twice, right? But just about the weight, right? So, do you remember? Were you at Yellow Bullet this year, or were you Promod deal?
Promod.
Okay, so Yellow Bullet overcast the entire weekend. Right. I'm talking a radial car's dream, right? And we're out there kicking ass, right? I think maybe we're number 1 or number 2 qualifier, right? Yeah. And we're kicking ass, easy street, right? This is what gets me every fucking. If you want to know why I lose in the finals, it's probably because I'm the man, right? But dude, we go into the finals and overcast, right? I put a package in the car. We're racing Benson, right?
Yeah.
And he's got that 4i Fox Waltz's car, small block Ford, fast, and I don't know, but it was in that event that he really got that car together.
Those guys are good racers.
Dude, Benson's a bad motherfucker.
They're really good racers.
He's mad at me right now for talking shit about his ECU, which I didn't actually talk shit about his ECU, but I think we'll be all right. But that car got really fast, and he was going like 408, right? And I made the critical mistake of I set the car up for the finals. I know it's him. I've been paying attention to him. I know how fast he's going.
You're trying to race him.
And I fucking tried to race him. So I put a hot one in it, right? But I have overcast. We've had a good track the whole weekend, right? Dude, we're going down the lanes to go up to the finals, and it's like fucking Jesus himself took the clouds and just pushed them aside, and it's straight lava sunlight, right? Just beating down on the track, right? And I know I'm on a scooter scooting up, and I'm like, we're fucked, because I have to move 80, 90 pounds in this car to get it to go down in the heat. The tune-up's not even ready for it, but there's, if nothing else, I could at least try to change the package. And we get the thing in the lanes, and hoods off, trunks off. There's fucking people that aren't even a part of our crew helping us move weight, and they're like, you got to come up right now. And I knew right away. I was like, we're cooked, boys. I fucked this up. Yeah. And if I just put the package in it, that would have went down, because he slowed his shit down, we would have beat him.
So,
and he knew. I don't know if he knew.
How many times have I told you, you race the track,
dude?
Not like every, I have people that I rate. Well, he went this. I'm like, I don't care what he went. I really don't care, because I'm going to go as fast as I can go. Right. With your data, what's the fastest you went on that condition?
Right.
You can't all of a sudden change that because he went 408.
Right. I can't go 408.
Right. But all you can do is go down the racetrack.
Right.
And if he struggles, then, you know what I mean?
And he slowed his shit down.
Right.
And we would have I don't know if we would have beat him, but it would have been a drag race,
right.
dude.
Right.
Couple numbers.
Anytime I've gotten to those scenarios where I try to race somebody for what they ran, it's never good,
dude.
And there's a strategy that goes along with that. Like Blevins and I were just talking about this. Blevins' car, like we were saying, right now we've got it in this window, and it thing just prints tickets. I can run from a mid 90 and the next run go a mid 80 if I need to. Right. It's that good right now. And I explained to him, I'm like, the last couple races, guys that are really fast have aborted runs against us.
Yeah, you force them into a mistake.
You force them because they're looking at what they see you do.
Right.
Right. And it's the same kind of stuff that happened with Manny's car. When it's that good, you really can put somewhat of a conservative, because these guys go up there thinking they got to run a number that they've never run because of what they saw your car do, instead of just going down the racetrack.
Dude, it's crazy.
But it's hard to do.
It's hard to do.
It's really hard to do.
It's hard to put your shit in the beams knowing you're going to get your ass dragged.
Well, here's the thing. 99% of the time, it works out. There is those guys.
Well, I'm saying if you're on the other end of it, right? Let's say I'm going up against Blevins.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to not swing for it.
I know.
Knowing if I just run what I normally run, I'm going to get my ass dragged by Blevins, right? So, like, I see it both ways. Like, you don't ever want to beat yourself, because God forbid something happens to Blevins and you win, right?
Right.
But, like, at the same time, you know nothing's going to happen to Blevins, and you're about to get fucked up.
Yeah, but the thing is, make it a drag race, because you don't know.
Right.
Things do happen, right? And that's why I'm saying 90% of the time it works out that making just a good call that you can go down the racetrack in those conditions, because you got to remember, a lot of those runs that you make in eliminations are not what you did in qualifying, because you end up running when the sun's out or things like that, right? So you have to take qualifying out of it and know that the best I can go on this is X.
Right.
Right. And if he outruns us, so be it. It was his day.
It was his day, bro.
Right. But I'm not going to beat myself.
He either got lucky or he was better.
Yeah. And there's guys you don't want to race.
Right.
Mark Woodruff, Woody, you don't want to race him, because that dude's going to have a tune-up in that thing. I can tell you so many times, like we've had to race him or other guys have had to race him. And dude, Woody will have that thing loaded up for bear. It doesn't matter what the conditions. And if it sticks, you're going home.
You're going home.
You're going home.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like Woody's car.
Yeah. I can remember we were at NMCA and Josh Ledford was tuning for Daniel Ferris, and he had to race Woody. I don't remember if it was I think it was the semis. And Josh was like, I don't even know what to do. I go, I'm going to tell you right now, if Woody makes the trip, you're not beating him.
Yeah.
Because he's got that thing loaded up, right?
So just run your own race.
Dude, they leave, and Woody's car has got the fucking nose up like 6 inches, and it is hauling ass. I'm telling you, I'm like, Josh is done.
Yeah.
And it just kept climbing, and he had to get out of it. But he was just driving out of their life. And I'm like, right there is why everybody's scared to race Woody.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
What car did Woody have before the yellow Corvette that I know him for?
Yeah, I don't think you would know. He had this really badass, I believe it was a 63 or 64 Vet. 63, I think.
Oh,
Blue.
I guess.
And he crashed it. There was a on-track incident that a grudge racer ran into him and wrecked the car. Yeah, you should have seen this thing. Unbelievable.
Do you know how it worked out after the fact?
So I don't. I know he still has the car. Eventually, he said he wants to put it back together, but I actually got him hooked up with Petty because that car is Petty and Lynch's old Corvette.
The wrecked one?
No. The one that he has now was Petty and Lynch's black Corvette.
No way.
Yeah. So I actually was at the track with Woody, and I knew...
Does Petty even care about shit like that?
No, not anymore.
Right?
He just doesn't have the time, right?
No, I'm saying, like, is he like, oh, sick, that's my old car?
Maybe for a little bit.
Yeah.
That car was so badass. And I remember, like, part of the deal was, like, we saw... Petty did the sale and everything, and then Petty's like, I want you to help him.
Okay.
You know what I mean? With the car. So, like, it was one of those deals, like...
He wanted out. He just didn't want to touch it.
He didn't have the time.
Right.
He didn't. You know what I mean? He didn't have the time anymore. Like, that car, he was racing that car when I raced with Jason Enos.
Right.
So we were racing together.
So is that the car, the Enos and that yellow Corvette, which was black at the time?
Right.
Right. That was the car that... Because I think you've told me the story. This is the car that started the relationship between you and Petty?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Jason Enos's car is, yeah.
Right.
So Enos's car was originally built by Vanishing Point Racecars. He had a partner in the car, and they had a small block in it, twin turbo deal.
Let me see if it's recording.
Okay.
Take a coffee sip. Yeah, we're dialed. We're dialed.
Should we wrap it up, or?
No, I don't care. No, this is sick.
Okay.
I love this stuff.
So Enos had this car. They had debuted it at one of the shakedowns. Wasn't running. It wasn't actually finished. But it was an unbelievable car. Like, sick, dude. Like, so badass. 67 Mustang. Anyways, I had started working with Dennis at DMC.
Yep.
And Jason and his partner in the car at the time kind of decided to go. One of them owned the drivetrain.
Yep.
And Jason owned the car.
Got it.
And they decided to kind of part ways. Jason really wanted to race, you know, and that guy was kind of on the fence with his business and anything. I don't know all the specifics of it. But anyway, so Enos brings the car to Dennis and buys a package from Proline. Buys a 670,
because this is before 41s. This is before MH6s.
The Hemi.
Hemis,
We never ran, you know, they at that time weren't running Hemis at all.
So these are conventional cast big blocks.
No, it's a Billet 5-inch bore space, Sonny Leonard based.
Oh, so a nitrous deal that they turned into a turbo deal?
Yeah.
Wow.
670 cubic inches. And so that's the combination that Lynch and Petty ran in their own car, right? And that was the combination to run in 10.5. It was, right? So Enos buys this combination from Proline.
Yep.
Brings the car to Dennis.
Yep.
Dennis and I and the guys basically turnkey the car.
Did you know Enos at all before this?
No.
Okay, got it.
No. And so Enos and I just kind of hit it off, right? Talking throughout the build and all this.
Yeah.
And he knew that I had raced with some other guys, and he's like, man, I need somebody to help me, like crew chief on the car. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to go racing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
who better to ask than the guy that helped build it? You know what I mean?
So it started out going, but the deal was what he did was he bought the package from Petty or from Proline, and then Petty came out and got it all running, got it going up and down the racetrack. You know what I mean? But Petty and Lynch raced 10.5 at the time.
Where was? Oh shit! So, wait, did Petty own Proline before Dillard?
Yes, but
was it Proline then? I'm saying.
It was, but not what you would think. It's nothing like it is.
So this package came from
Proline.
Dillard Proline that we know.
Yes.
Got it.
Petty had already transitioned to just tuning and all that.
Okay, got it.
You know what I mean?
How long? What year is this?
This would have been like that 2000.
I mean, 10.5.
2008, 2009, I'm going to say.
Okay.
I think is. is about the time frame.
Well, that would make sense if Enos's partner was having financial struggles because of the 08.
I don't know,
crash.
and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if he was having financial.
Right, he just wanted out.
Yeah, I just don't think they both had the same mindset of wanting to race, right? Like Enos came in and like guns blazing, like he wanted to race.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what he did was he hired Petty to come out. Petty would go testing with us, and I learned a ton of stuff just working with Steve, but I had a little bit of knowledge on tuning side. So like he would get it in this window and I could maintain it, right? Well, when we were racing against him, Enos is like, I don't want Petty tuning the car when we're racing against them because I want to try to have our own edge.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And Petty was super cool with it because he wanted to focus on his car, right? And so, but what we did is it was super cool, dude. Like,
and we're talking Big Stuff 3 at the time?
Yes, Big Stuff 3. But Enos had this oddball trailer that pitted out of the opposite side that you would normally pit out, right?
Okay, that is weird.
Weird, right? But what we started doing is we started parking the trucks and trailers together.
You and Petty and Lynch.
And so we had this massive pit stall.
Sick.
And we all hung out. And like, look, Petty would come over and check on me and everything, you know, and help. I don't want to say that, but it was just cool as hell racing with him, right? And I learned all this stuff. And then Enos had such a drive to be competitive and to do well that we would test all the time. I mean, dude, we would come home from a race and like I would cut the whole front of the car off because Petty would be like, man, I think that this deal isn't working and we could get some weight off. And like I did all the chassis work on it.
Because Enos was like, yeah, do it.
Yeah. So I kind of got ahead of it. We finished the car. I started racing with Enos. Enos offered me a full-time job to go racing with him. He wanted to race like full-time 10.5, like crazy, right?
So wait, what were you doing at the time?
At the time, I was working with Dennis at DMC.
Yep.
I also had my own shop at this time. That's kind of in this transition, you know, of before everything hit the fan. And so, I ended up telling Dennis, I'm like, dude, this was an opportunity that I really, I don't know what's going to come of it.
I might be back here in a year.
Yeah. And I didn't leave him hanging by any means. I told him what I was doing and I just said, it's something that I would like to try.
Yeah. Well, you and Dennis, I know for a fact, are still good to this day.
I talk to him all the time.
Yeah.
Send work. Like
that blue Camaro, that first gen just came out of there and you helped him on it.
Yeah. No. I like Dennis a lot. Dennis and I's story it's crazy how close they are with kids and time. And,
oh, really?
Yeah, dude. It's crazy. Like, our lives have so much in common when we got to really know each other. It's insane. It's eerie. It's wild.
I'd love to hear about that at some point.
So I start to work for Enos.
Yep.
And I'm a full-time crew chief.
That's a little crazy, right?
Yeah.
Like, at the time, were people getting paid a full, like, so your life now is literally to race this car.
Yeah. And so logistics, you got to hear the logistics on it because I worked at Dennis's, and Dennis's shop is 2.5 hours away from where I live.
Yeah, I know that.
Right?
Right.
So my sister didn't live that far. She lived about a half an hour away from Dennis. So I would go to Dennis's and I would get there Monday morning and I'd work Monday through Thursday. I'd stay with my sister. And then I'd go home and work in my shop, like basically Friday through the weekend. And then Monday I'd go back there. Right. So when the deal with Enos was even a little bit further. But I'm like, man, I can't pass this opportunity. No. So the same kind of thing. I stayed at my sister's. I went back and forth, and did this. And then we went racing.
Yep.
So I was on the road a lot. You know what I mean? But you get those feelings about things. Like I felt this was bringing me somewhere that I couldn't pass up.
Yeah.
Right. And so Enos and I, he did a contract with me, guaranteed me work for 2 years. He's like, I don't know if I'll do it longer than 2 years, but I'll guarantee you 2 years, which we opened up basically a chassis shop. We started doing, we did a couple full builds, but we mainly repaired cars.
Yeah.
And Billy Gilsbach came to work with us.
Oh, no shit.
That's where I got the opportunity to work with him, which was sick.
That's sick.
Because that dude's like on a whole nother level.
Yeah.
Like you talk about talented fabricators. He's the top.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's cool.
Just like an artist. It's crazy. But so I got the opportunity to work with him. And then, Enos raced really hard. Dude, we raced crazy. I mean, every weekend we were out either testing or racing for 2 years straight. And then, I mean, he got burnt out, right?
Yeah.
Rightfully so. I don't know many people that could keep going for that long.
Dude, I mean, yeah.
And he had a business, right? He's got a really badass prototype business. His business was growing. He just had to focus his things on focus on different things at that point, which I got it.
Right.
So I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'm going to maybe go back to building cars. I don't really know what I'm going to do. And Petty called me and he's like, hey, man. And I had told him, I said, it looks like things are not going to keep going with Enos. Not bad. Just, I'm just kind of giving him a heads up. Because at this point, Penny and I had become close. Right. Right? Because
racing each other every weekend.
But just talking. Like, we would just talk. You know what I mean? And he would tell me stuff that he was going to work on. And he actually started having me, a couple guys, local, he would give him my number and be like, hey, why don't you have Jamie? I think he could help you, right? And I was like, wow, this is like insane. I never would have thought I'd be in a position, right?
Was Petty a legend already?
Oh, yeah. Dude,
yeah?
When I had my shop, me and my buddy Ray used to have a TV, and we would have on loop Petty and Lynch's Mustang racing at Rockingham where it carried the wheels the whole 8th mile. Yeah. And it was the sickest thing. And
that's the sickest video on the earth.
Yeah, right? And so, we would see Petty at, Shakedown because we always ran with, either my Camaro. We always had some car, not at any bit of level of them. Right. And I remember we used to ask Petty, what he was going to run, and he would tell us these numbers, and then he'd run them. We were like, how the fuck does he do this,
Dude,
right?
I just did that to Carlos this weekend. They're like, how do you know? And I'm like, I don't know, man. There's some math you can do.
And so, he was a legend, dude. I can remember for the first, when I first started working and when he would call me, I'd be like, I can't believe Steve Petty's calling me. Yeah. Right? Seriously, I couldn't believe it, right?
I don't know if you heard me talk about it with John, but, I was saying, I don't know if it was John that we were talking about it, but, dude, Petty knows me by first name. Yeah. To a normal human being, that's not significant. But we're talking about fucking Steve Petty. Yeah. The godfather of this bullshit that we call, right. You know what I mean, drag racing, right? Yeah. So I get it.
Yeah. Sick.
It's sick, dude.
Right? And so he called and I told him what was going on, and he's like, man, I could really use somebody to help me tune cars. And I'm like, yeah? He's like, yeah, I really do. He's like, I think you can do it. And I'm like, how the frig am I going to make a living tuning race cars? You know what I mean? Yeah. But an opportunity came up, and I've told this story before. It's crazy. It's crazy when I tell it to this day. I can tell it 100 times.
Tell it again, dude.
He called me up on I don't know what the day was, and he said to me, he's like, hey, I got a job for you. I was like, okay. He's like, 670, 10.5 car, everything that you know. Right. He's like, I need you to just go out there and race with them. He's like, I have to be in Australia, and there's a conflict, and I can't be at both places at the same time. I'm like, okay, cool. And I was like, where do I got to go? And he's like, Bahrain. I said, what? I said, what? Right? And he was like, yeah, Bahrain. And I'm like, dude, he's like, I need an answer pretty quick. I'm like, Petty, you got to give me I got to digest this whole thing.
I need passports. I need all.
Well, dude, let me give you a little rundown. First of all.
What year is this? Ballpark it.
It's all that 2008, 2009, maybe 10. It's all in this same area, right? Yep. Same time frame. So I'm like, I gotta figure this out. I said, right. I've never traveled anywhere by myself. Ever. I've never been out of the country. Right. Ever. I don't know any of these people. I'm going to the Middle East, which at the time that wasn't a place you'd go and vacation at.
I don't think it's still a place you go.
Not really, right? So I'm like, you got to give me a little bit. He's like, well, I need an answer pretty quick. And I'm like, all right, let me go home.
First of all, this is not how Petty sounds. And you do an amazing Petty imitation, dude. Yeah. So lay it on us, Miller.
Daddy-o. I'm going to need you to go to Bahrain, Daddy-o. Right? So it's so he, I said, Petty, listen, give me a little bit of time, right? I'll get back to you tonight. So I went home. I talked to Julie about it, and I'm like, I just don't know if I wasn't going to do it. I really wasn't going to do it. I'm like, I don't think I can do it. I'm like, dude, the anxiety to me, I'm not I don't claim to have anxiety, but thinking about getting on this plane for all these hours of travel.
Yep.
Right?
To go to a not great place with people you don't know.
I don't know anybody.
Yep.
I never met them. I don't know
You don't even speak the same goddamn language.
No. Right? And I don't know what to expect,
Right.
you know? And I was like, I said to her, I'm like, I don't think I can do it. And she's like, I'm going to tell you right now, you have to do it. She goes, because if you don't do it, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. She said, if it sucks for 1 week.
Yep.
But if you don't do it, all you're going to go back and say, what if I went there? And what could have been? And so I called Petty up and I'm like, yeah, I'll go. And so, dude, I got on an airplane and all they knew, there was a guy getting off the airplane with a red hat on. Okay? When I got off the airplane, there was a guy there going, Jimmy. And I'm like, I guess I'm Jimmy.
Jimmy it is.
That's where Jimmy Fab came from.
Okay.
All right? Because they didn't say my name. They didn't say Jamie. They said Jimmy.
Right.
Okay, I'm Jimmy.
Jimmy Fab.
Now, fast forward, it was Khalid Mohammed that picked me up from the airport, which is the guy that drove like the Promod that we raced over in Bahrain, and super good dude.
Yeah, these are guys that you still talk to.
I still talk to, and they're friends, right? But I don't know who these guys are.
Yeah, leading into it, it's scary.
You just don't know, right? So, dude, I go there, and we race. Did okay. Everything went fairly smooth. Had some hiccups at the end. We had a tire failure that messed up the car. Driver was fine. You know, they wanted me to stay and fix the car, and I was like, no, I can't. I got to get back home, you know? So, dude, the day I was leaving, craziness there. So they were having a protest against the King of Bahrain.
Oh, my God.
Dude, there is people rioting in the streets.
And those probably aren't peaceful riots.
No. So I'm not kidding you, and this is funny because I told this story, and I know when I tell it, people think I'm full of crap, but we were in a car, and we turned down this roadway, and they started shooting tear gas bombs. And we had to make all these turns and all this. And so my buddy Tim Davis,
the man,
I had told him about this, and he's like, yeah, sure they did. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, fast forward a bunch of years, Tim ended up coming with me to Bahrain.
Yep.
And the dude that was driving the car when they shot the tear gas bombs picked us up at the airport. We get in the car, we're talking a little bit, and he goes, Jimmy, remember when they shoot the tear gas bombs? I'm like, yeah, I remember. And I look at Tim, I go, you thought I was full of crap,
you thought I was full of shit all these years.
And dude, it was craziness leaving there. And I was like, you know what? That was 2011. It was 2011.
Why do you remember that?
Just because I remember the time frame now, because I remember at 2011 there was just a lot of issues there. Okay. Yeah. And I was like, I'm never coming back here. Like I personally had no bad experience with anybody there. Right. All super cool.
Yeah.
Like you have to experience that, because if you just go by media and stuff, okay,
I'll give you that.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because once you meet these people, and the people that I got to meet,
right,
they're great people. They really were.
I mean, listen, I've learned. If there's one thing I've learned as being an adult, most people are good.
Yeah. Right. And that's what I hate, because Middle East this time. I'm like, man, I have guys that I consider friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That are just great people and looked out for us and took care of us and treated us like awesome. Right. It wasn't that I wouldn't go back for that reason. It was that deal when I left just was like
the instability.
Right. And I was like, man, I don't ever want to be put in this position again.
Yeah.
And
makes you appreciate America.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. And then fast forward, we went back, but
fast forward, and I'm back.
I'm back. So like I went back, and I don't remember the year. I honestly, I can't remember the year.
It wasn't that. I think I know the story that you're about to tell, and it wasn't that long ago. Because we were hanging out, I think.
Yeah. So the first time that Timmy and I went back we were not. Okay. It was before that.
I remember the summer camp thing.
Oh, prison camp.
Yeah, we'll call it.
So we went back to Bahrain, Timmy and I, and there was no issues. Like there was none of that. The same guys we're working with, great great guys.
Yeah, just no riots.
Just no riots.
Because if there was no riots on the first one, it would have been great too.
Yeah,
right.
You know, and it was an experience. It was definitely interesting. So Timmy and I went, and then fast forward from there, we actually both got hired by Eono Racing, and we were racing against them at the time. We beat them
on the previous 2 trips.
Yeah, the previous 2 trips, we were racing with Q80 team.
Yep.
And Q80 team wasn't sure that they were going to race the following season. You know, so I called Dillard and I'm like, hey man, these guys are reaching out that they want us to work there.
Eono.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to. I'm certainly going to give Q80 first right of refusal because we worked with them already, right? That's the right way to handle it.
Yeah.
I said, but if they don't know what they're doing, I'm going to take this opportunity because they want to hire us for all the races.
Yeah, so, we got bills to pay.
Yeah, and so and honestly, that's how through this whole tuning thing, that's what I did in the wintertime. I spent from basically February to March, I was in Bahrain the whole winter.
It's wild.
Now, don't get me wrong. I came home. I went back and forth.
Right.
I would usually go for 2 weeks, come home a week, 2 weeks, you know what I mean? But I spent my winters in Bahrain because that's where we made our money over the winter when there was no racing. There was no winter series. There wasn't all this stuff that's going on now, right? And, man, over there with that team, with Eono and everything, got, you know, a relationship with Shane Tecklenburg, which still a great friend, like awesome, right?
Dude, he's a man.
Worked with Mikey Reese. I mean, just all these guys over there that super cool, right? And Tim was there and just like, we had so many different cars that we were running and building and the experience and like what you learned over there because the conditions like always the same. So you can try all this stuff. And we
what do you mean always? Why?
Like just the weather was always the same.
It was just consistent.
It was just consistent.
The day was the day, the night was the night.
Yeah, you know what I mean? We always ran like you only ran, and I don't even want to say this somewhat because basically we wouldn't start till like 6 or 7 o'clock.
Right.
And then it would be at night, you know? So but we learned a ton of stuff over there, you know what I mean? Which translated into coming back here and racing, and you got a head start because you've been running all winter.
Right, with some bad motherfuckers.
Yeah. And then that all stopped really when COVID, you know what I mean? And because, you know, travel bans, things like that. And after we didn't do it and everything worked out, you just realized, well,
it's not worth it.
It's not that it's not worth it, but I have enough things going on here that I don't have to be gone that long.
The winter series, there's almost between US Street, Snowbirds, the winter series, there's no downtime anymore.
Most I get is like maybe a 3 or 4 week span around Christmas time.
Yeah, I was gonna say from which one's
World
first?
Cup.
US Street.
Yeah.
Well, there's World Cup,
right?
And then is it US Street or Snowbirds? Which one's first?
Snowbirds.
Yeah. And then that break till the beginning of January when US Street
is the time off. But typically I have some kind of project going on at the shop where I'm doing fab work or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yep. Keep me busy.
See, I started a podcast.
Yeah, this is cool. This is cool. So so that's kind of how it all worked out, and this is what I've done for I think it's been 15 years now. You know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It is. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, you know, I say about that must be nice. Like, look, man, I would never. First of all, I would never have opportunities. I wouldn't live the life I live now if Petty didn't take me under his wing and teach me this stuff. But I also put a lot of time and effort in to try to do a good job and, you know, show him the appreciation because everybody gets somewhere because of something, right? You know what I'm saying?
It's about who you know.
It's and about people believing in you and giving you an opportunity, right? And it's like, don't get me wrong. There's just like any job, there's downsides. I hate, at this point, I don't like traveling all the time. It's tough. It's a tough life. You know what I mean? I was just on 4 weeks. I haven't been home.
Dude,
you know?
4 weeks. 4 weeks I've been waiting to do this.
Yeah. So.
Well, I mean, my story's similar. Like, you've given me insane opportunities, right?
But I think that's the way you pay it forward.
Right.
Right. But I've also tried to help people and they forget it. And I don't care to help people like that. I know that sounds crappy, but man, like, I feel like I make a point. Here's a perfect example. We started talking about Steve Petty. What's the first thing I say? I will not talk about that guy without saying what he's done for me.
Right.
Because I appreciate it. I'm never going to forget it.
Right.
It doesn't matter where I go, what I do. that guy is what led me in this direction
Right.
and taught me a ton of shit,
Yeah,
right?
it's crazy.
But I also put a lot of effort. I made a lot of sacrifices to take what he taught me and try to get even better.
Right.
Right. And be able to run with him.
Right.
You know what I mean? That was always my goal, to be able to run with him.
How nice is it? Because I got a feeling, right? 2 years ago, US or Snowbirds, I beat you in the finals.
Oh, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And let me tell you what, it felt good.
Yeah.
And then the next race, Miller beat my fucking dick off, dude. Beat me up so bad, dude. Like, do you get that same feeling?
Yeah.
So like, when I had you outgunned, you guys were having issues with the pirate car.
Yeah, we did. Yep.
Nyman's car was on rails. It was,
you guys were doing a great job with it. Yeah.
you know, but you guys were having issues. The feeling I had, I had never been in that position before, right? We were racing at a pretty high level, and I'm racing my mentor, Jamie Miller, right? And it's a big deal to me, right? And but it didn't feel like got this motherfucker. Like, I remember, not to get too weird, right? I remember at the end, I was just like, that was sick. Miller's probably hyped right now.
Yeah, I was.
And we shook hands and hugged on the sideline. It was sick, right? But it was a weird sensation, dude. And
it is, because, like, for me with Petty, I have so much respect for this guy, but I also think, and I know I took it like this, like, I've helped you get to that point, and it's cool to see you have that success, right?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
It's fucking cool.
Right? And if you don't feel that way, then you shouldn't be helping guys, because if you can't be happy for when they have the success, and you beat my ass, and I love it. It's great.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like, that's why you helped me to eventually be good at this stuff, right? Like,
exactly. And the same thing Petty did. You know what I mean? And it's the same thing. Like, he doesn't want to lose to me. I don't want to lose to him.
Right.
But I also, it's funny, I've talked to this about guys. If you watch when Petty and I race in the same class, dude, our two cars seem to just, like, take this path, and then everybody's trying to catch us. Because the two of us...
What do you mean?
So, when we raced LDR...
Okay.
There wasn't very many guys running 80s. And we started going 80s.
Yeah.
And we started going 87s. And we started going 86, and they put weight on us. And those two cars...
A car you were tuning and a car Petty was tuning. You guys would both pave the way at the same time.
Right.
Got it.
You know, and I'll tell you another one that it's happened like that. Jeff Pierce and I talked about it. 632. Pro 632 in PDRA. Mm-hmm. Amber Franklin's car and the Pirates car.
Yep.
Those two cars just started just going. And Jeff would say, he's like, man, I like racing you because it's a challenge. And I the same way. I mean, they had our number.
Right.
You know, they did. They always were like one number ahead of us, but don't think that I wasn't going there trying. Trying stuff, right? But that's what you want to race people like that, so that elevate you, right? And that's why it's so fun to race with Petty in a class like that, because it just makes you better.
You got to be on above your A game if you think you're gonna win.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
Yeah, that's sick.
It is. It is.
Well, dude, we've been doing this for 2 hours.
2 hours.
Yeah,
nobody's gonna listen to this for that stuff.
I fucking promise you, Miller. Everybody's gonna listen to this.
Like 5 minutes and be like, click.
Well, don't worry about it. I only got 30 viewers, so. All right, let's get the fuck out of here.
All right,
dude.
sounds good.
Thank you, dude.
You're welcome.